Shots to full board. I'm not sure. We just want to. Oh my god. Good, I think. Definitely interesting.
Yeah.
No worries. I'll chat with you later. But yeah, thanks for going and thanks for coming tonight. I think we would love to talk about too about like mental health resources available. Yes. Because that was so impressive. I was like, wow, that's really the boyfriend for you so organizing that stats and everything. Yeah, you know what? So, but next week, hopefully. That's all right. Yeah. I'll bring it up tomorrow to our members and then we'll get to start getting your information. That'd be great.
I'd like to call the regular meeting of the South San Antonio Independent School District to order. The time is 6 p.m. and the date is April the 18th, 2018. Roll call, Mrs. Martinez.
Mrs. Angelino Seguin.
Present.
Mr. Luis Ibarra Jr.
Here.
Mr. Edward Munguia.
Present.
Mrs. Leticia Guerra. Here. Mrs. Connie Pardo.
Present.
Mrs. Ella Flores.
Present.
Okay.
We will now be doing the Pledge of Allegiance, Texas Pledge, the prayer, and the call to action. All right. Everyone, please stand. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Heavenly Father, as we begin tonight's South San Antonio ISD School Board meeting, we ask for your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Amen. Now our call to action. All students will enjoy successful education experiences to empower them to make decisions and enrich their lives in the future they create.
We're going to administer the oath of office, but our candidate, actually our trustee, is ill today. And so we will now go into closed session.
Madam Chair, if I may, point of order, please. I called Dr. Saavedra and asked her about the agenda. It seems there's been an error made on the agenda. There's no citizens to be heard listed, and I think it was just a mistake that was made by administration. But I understand that the timeline was such that we could not add that item to the agenda according to council because it wasn't enough time for an amendment. But nevertheless, I think that the community that is here that wants to speak, they should be afforded that opportunity because it wasn't their mistake.
I understand, and I was under the direction of council that it was up to the board president to allow it, and it is going to be allowed after closed session.
Okay, then thank you. You've answered my question.
Okay. And so now the board will be going into closed session. Let me read that. The board will return to open session and take appropriate action, if any, on items discussed in closed session. No action will be taken in closed session. Further, board members are reminded that all items discussed in closed session must remain confidential so as to avoid liability to the district. The board will consider and discuss the following items: closed meeting pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.0821. Number one, discussion concerning personnel matters pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. And number two, discussion on the duties and responsibilities of the superintendent. And the time is 6:03 p.m. The open meeting is now in session. The time is 6:54 p.m. The next section is the citizens to be heard. I can have council read the guidelines.
Yes, Madam Board President, members of the board, Dr. Saavedra. At regular meetings of the Board of Trustees, members of the public will have the opportunity to address the Board of Trustees during this section on the agenda, or on any subject within its jurisdiction except the matter related to pending litigation. Each speaker should sign in on the public comment sheet available at the Board of Trustees meeting. Speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes. The Board of Trustees may, if any member deems it necessary, limit both the number of speakers and the time allotted to each speaker upon motion and a second by any other member. Under the law, the Board of Trustees may only take action on items specifically listed on the agenda. Subject matter presented which is not part of the agenda will be referred to the appropriate department for review and subsequent action. Therefore, the Board of Trustees may not take formal action on any requests made during the public comment period. Citizens to be heard which are not on the agenda. But can refer such requests to school staff for review if appropriate. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience or the board members. Persons attending board meetings shall not delay, interrupt, or disrupt the proceedings or refuse to obey the orders of the presiding officer. Any disruption will result in immediate removal of members of the public and possible action of the board to remove disruptive individual board members. Specific attacks on individuals will not be tolerated, and all rules of decorum apply.
Okay, so the first one I have is Mr. Al Porter.
Madam President, distinguished board members, Superintendent Saavedra, and other guests. My name is Al Porter, and I am currently the sports coordinator assignment for the South San School District and have been for several years. I have worked in the South San School District Athletic Department since 1989 with Simon James. Back in May 20th, 2015, I made a board presentation to voice concerns over the method of payment distribution for myself and my workers that I assigned to work athletic games both at the high school and middle school levels. There are no problems with the high schools nor the athletic department. They are superb and payments are made in a timely manner. However, the problem exists when my workers provide service at the middle school levels. Here, school secretaries are also required to handle the responsibilities that are usually those of bookkeepers. These responsibilities include processing paperwork, having vendor numbers assigned to new workers, collecting all necessary forms such as tournament sign-in sheets, W-9s, and conflict of interest forms, and then having all these paperwork sent to the district's office. All this in addition to their normal assigned duties. This is not fair to the secretaries and thus causes an overload of work and delay in payment to my workers. Currently, I have workers who have not been paid for services provided at middle school tournament games back in January, February, and early March. When I ask when payment can be expected, either by phone or in person, I am given several excuses and blame is placed in different directions. Nobody should have to wait over 2 months to get paid for services provided. No one in this room would be happy if this happens to them. So I am asking the district to remedy the situation. There are solutions, but changing systems or software in the middle of the year when the business department is wasting money is not one of them. So let's be fair to the workers who take time to provide services to this district. I take pride in working here in the South San School District. All I ask is that we create a system or method of payment that is quick and in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Tom Cummings?
Ms. Ostergein, members of the board, Dr. DeVito. My name is Tom Cummins and I'm representing South San AFT. Regarding the budget discussions, there are several points we would like to make. First, the tax recertification election is critical and planning for this must continue. AFT first urged the board to consider this back in 2007, and the board acted then. About $70 million extra dollars would have been spent on programs for enriching South San students at a minimal cost for homeowners. Please do not delay again. Second, while there is discussion about cuts to librarian and registered nurse positions, we would urge you to keep all librarians and RNs. Those are essential positions. Don't begin dismantling the district by removing these positions or others. A message must be sent that this board stands with its employees. Third, there is a reserve fund. Spend some of that money on the non-recurring items in the budget so we can maintain and expand the services for students. In a district like South San, a 2-month reserve is more than adequate. But in fact, we probably only have to dip into the reserve fund for $1 to $2 million, keeping the budget close to a 3-month reserve. Another choice would be to pass a contingency budget based on the outcome of the TRA election. Other districts have done that. There are two sources for financial relief. First, the TRA election, as was mentioned. Second, the legislature meets in January. The pressure is building for the legislature to address school financing, and we have a good chance for relief at that point. So again, I think the reserve fund is something that should be looked at. While you are planning the budget, please keep in mind that funding cuts become achievement gaps as students advance through the grades with fewer programs and resources. Each year that the cuts are sustained, the larger the achievement gap becomes. To not act boldly at this point to avoid funding cuts would be irresponsible. So please begin planning with the reinvigorated South San in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Juan Vihil?
and schools that are losing these students. I want to see if you can answer that or direct me to someone that can give me the information. Also is for what reason, like I asked Mr. Cerveza, no name mentioned that we discussed last time, but I appreciate those talents around our students because South End is really going down. And I believe that's it. Those are my concerns on that tally, and we'll get into the other thing with curriculum and so forth.
Okay, Dr. Saavedra.
But we'll provide you the information you requested, but you'll need to submit the request in writing. You can submit it to my office, and we'll be happy to respond to your request.
Okay. I appreciate also if you can direct me to getting some kind of paper with everybody's positions, like who I can contact for concerns of food, for any other.
Yeah, we'll provide you whatever you're requesting, but you'll need to submit in writing.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes citizens to be heard. Next action is presentations, reports, and discussion. Number one, presentation on second presentation on the 2018-19 budget preparations. Dr. Saavedra.
So to be a member of the board, I'm going to call on Mr. Samada, our CFO, to do this presentation. This is the second presentation on budget preparations, and we'll provide an opportunity, of course, to respond to any questions.
Good evening. The presentation tonight is going to have some information that traditionally I don't think it's been shown, but I hope it does provide value to the board members. So this first slide is a trend line of our enrollment. As you can see, since 13-14, we've seen a steady decline with it gaining ground in this last year where we saw a loss of 500 students. Going into 18-19, trying to keep consistent with the trends that we're seeing, with the fact that IDEA is continuously opening new grade levels for the next few years. We take that into account as well, and in 18-19 we're expecting the same 500 decline in enrollment. Going into 19-20, in this presentation we're going to go 2 years out just to make sure that we have a long-term picture. We also anticipate to continue to lose students, not at the same rate, and we hope that it slows down, but we still anticipate loss of students of around 250. The decline from 13-14 to 18-19 is about 14.12% loss of enrollment. This next slide is it's a trend on revenues and expenditures. Going back 15-16 to in 19-20, you can see that we're using the enrollments that we're using actuals for the years 15-16, 16-17. For 17-18, we're using projections, and for 18-19 and 19-20, we're using estimated enrollments as well. Again, 19-20 would be a legislative year, so our best estimates are based on current law. If the law changes in favor of the district, of course, we would update it next summer. Revenues, as you can see, in 15-16, we're at $81.1 million. Anticipation for 18-19 is $71.2 million, so it's a $10 million loss of revenues. Our expenditures in 15-16 was at $80.8 million. Current expenditures with the new programs would be at $77.8 million. That's with no reductions. So this is taking our existing budget that we adopted this year, looking forward at new programs, and adding that on top of last year's adopted budget. And then, of course, 19-20, taking in consideration the loss of students of 250, we would anticipate more lost revenue, taking this down to about $69 million on current legislation. And again, expenditures just stays constant unless we do a reduction of program, or some kind of reduction in cost. So anticipation for 1819 is 6.6 million. In 1920, it goes up to 8.8 million. This next slide is a presentation of our revenues and the same expenditures with the TRE. So the only numbers that change are our revenues in 1819 and 1920. Our revenue goes up to 77.6 in 1819, reducing our loss to 267,000. The increase in revenue is 6.3 million estimated. And then in 1920, our revenue is at 75.2 million for a loss of 2.7 million with an increase in revenue in that year from our original projection without a TRE of 6.1. This next slide is just a side-by-side comparison of the previous slides with the TRE and without the TRE, showing our revenues again with and without the TRE, and then our adopted budget for 17-18 plus new program costs for a total appropriations for both years without any changes or any reductions. You can see the 6.6 loss and the $6.6 million loss without the TRE, and then the 267,000 loss with if a TRE passed. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. This next slide is the same slide we presented at the first budget meeting where we showed the summary of reductions. This is just a updated version with some changes that administration has made based on new information or as we reviewed the items that were initially looked at. So you can see the original information had a total district reductions of 7.4, and the new reduction is at 6.6. So we have reduced the amount of reductions by 753,000. As you can see, there's specific ones that have changed. The teacher line item has changed from an anticipated 24 units to an anticipated 19 units, which was a savings of about 340,000. Again, our teacher allocation is based on enrollment. So depending on the enrollment we get, can change those numbers. Even if enrollment is not higher, it comes back to the 22-to-1 ratio. So right now it's just sort of a calculation we've made based on trends, again, that we're seeing losses at the different campuses to see which campuses will lose so many students. The other area that will reduce is contracted services by about 110,000. Reduction of police services got reduced by about 310,000. And then campus-based programs was reduced by about 150,000. This is just a view of the budget as it would be presented to the board by function. So it shows the 17-18 adopted budget and then the 2018-19 budget. So you can see what areas or what functions were reduced, or in the case of health services actually increased, student transportation increased. The 740, the last line item, basically those are sort of miscellaneous, so it's hard to categorize it in function because right now it's just a general 10% reduction of supplies, 10% reduction of contracted services. So depending on the department or the campus's decisions on what they actually reduce would change the function, so it's not something that I can easily predict. This next slide is just a complete view of how the budget was built, showing total revenues and total appropriations by function, showing the projected surplus. And this is with the reduction. So this shows the projected surplus of $36,915. This is where I initially indicated that I tried presenting the data in a different format. This information is so when we look at the budget, we see $71 million as our budget, and when we talk about reductions, some of the questions are, why do we choose different areas? So when we get our revenues from the state, there are certain revenues that are restricted or have specific regulations around them. That's how we use them. And so my attempt is to sort of pick apart the total revenue and show you what we really work with as a district to say this is discretionary. This is what we truly can say we can spend on anything we want as a district. So the basic instruction is for direct instructional purposes, and that's the meat of our budget. So that's teacher salaries, all the classroom supplies, things of that nature. GT, CTE, and GT, I apologize, is gifted and talented. CTE is the career and tech, they're all called allocations, so there's different pots of money we get from the state. So CTE is career and tech. We get special ed funds, we get bilingual funds, we get state compensation funds, high school allotment funds. Pre-K, we don't necessarily get earmarked funds for pre-K, but we have to have a half-day pre-K program. And so that's, again, it's one of those things that it's a requirement. We can't choose not to have half-day pre-K. So that portion of pre-K is just sort of the half, but it's not the full day. Athletics, it's not highlighted, so that's part of our discretionary funds. That's where the district can decide to change that entirely or move those funds however they would wish. And then, of course, just overall discretionary funds is the same thing. And then we have TRS revenue. So our TRS on behalf is basically the state match for our retirement. We record it as revenue. We have the same expense out there, but it's in that number. So in that $71 million number, $3 million of it is already dedicated to the retirement system. So highlighted at the bottom, I showed the non-discretionary, all the items highlighted add up to about $19 million. This year, next year, we anticipate it to be about $19.1 million. The discretionary, which means we have more flexibility on how we use it, is $56.8 million this year, and it's going to go down to $52.1 million. So this next slide takes that same information on the discretionary side, and then what I tried doing was saying, okay, how much is allocated for teachers of this discretionary pot of money? So in 17-18, we have estimated about $56.8 million. Of that $56.8 million, 27 is just in salaries. So these are the teacher salaries, teacher aide salaries, and benefits, I'm sorry. And this is just our basic stuff. So this is not our teachers we classify as state comp or special ed. These are just our regular, everyday teacher, elementary classroom teachers. The basic formula that we give campuses to say this is how many teachers you get this year because your enrollment is this number. So after taking teachers' salaries out, we're left with, this year we're left with $28.9 million. Next year we're left with 26.6. This is just a pie chart trying to show that same information. As you can see, the discretionary in blue is 37% of that that remaining funds. Teacher wages is 36%, and then the non-discretionary is 27%. This next one sort of takes into consideration things that are set, things that we cannot change. And so utilities being one of those, our DAP, we have to have those services, things like that, they're not necessarily set aside by revenue, but in our budget, it's things that we can eliminate. So when I take a cut of the discretionary, the blue piece, which on the previous slide, it now comes down to 32%, with 5% being just other things that are sort of set in our budget that we can't really eliminate. And just the blue piece changed. The teacher piece stayed the same, and the non-discretionary stayed the same. This next one is just a bar chart showing in this case, salaries versus all other expenditures. So you can see that in this, for all the different functions, how much there is really left after salaries. So in the function 11, which again is our instructional, 3 or 4% is left for supplies, contracted services, things of that nature. The largest area with that is not heavily staffed is our 53, which is instruction. That's because they have a lot of infrastructure they got to maintain. And then of course 81, which is capital outlay, which there's no staff in there. It's all capital expenditures that we have. This next slide is just a review of information from last year to say, last year we had the school closures and we had indicated that there was a savings of 3.9 million. And that savings has been that number. The way we used it is sort of, when we looked at the budget last year, it was an overall deficit just like this year. And we didn't necessarily say one thing was done with this savings. The entire budget was done with the savings from this and the bilingual clusters and other things that we did. We presented a budget, we had a full budget, and we just used the different things to decide what was important to the district for last year. And that's how we spent those money. But these are just a few of things that we were able to do because of school closures. This slide is on our proposed TRE and how it would impact us. So a 13% tax rate increase estimated to bring in 6.4 million in new revenue. Of that 6.4, 5.6 million will be paid by the state aid or local businesses or commercial properties, and then the remaining amount of 800,000 is paid by the actual homeowners. This one is just showing you the surrounding districts as far as who all has passed the TRE at this point. You can see Edgewood, Southwest, Harlandale, Southside, and San Antonio have all passed the TRE to the full amount of $1.17. This next piece shows the number of low-performing schools that each district has had. As you can see, we had 0, while other districts with the higher tax rate and more funds has not been as successful. And then the number of campuses in district earning 1 or more distinctions. Again, South San leads all districts at a lower tax rate with receiving lower revenue per student. This slide is just a comparison of how a tax rate increase would impact the homeowner. So a home valued at $25,000 would have no impact on the homeowner. A home valued at $50,000 would have a $2.71 monthly expense, you could say. That's how much it would cost them a month to support a TRE. The next house at $75,000, a home at $75,000, that monthly cost to a taxpayer would be $5.42. And then the home valued at $100,000, that monthly cost to a homeowner would be $8.13. A TRE does not impact somebody with a property tax exemption for age 65 or older. Their property values are frozen. Questions?
Board is now open for discussion. This is not a Lone Star governance item, but it is one of the tasks that the state has allowed the board to do is to review the budget. And so it is now open. Is there anyone who would like to begin? Any questions? Mr. Ibarra? And it'll be Mr. Murguia. Ms. Flores?
I have a couple of questions, but first I'd like to start with asking the superintendent a question. Dr. Savetta, on the System of Great Schools summit that we attended and that we're trying to incorporate into our district. Autonomy for campuses is one thing that they brought up. As we go into this budget, difficult budget year, are principals getting some autonomy over their own campuses in reference to cutting positions cut or?
The answer is yes. Actually, it's a good question. We previously have talked about some potential reductions if a TRE does not pass. And as you know, we at a recent meeting a month or so back, I addressed a group of librarians, for example, is because we looked in that area as a possible reduction. And there's other categories like that. Since then, we have identified the value of those potential cuts and have basically identified a dollar value per school. And J.C. helped me with this, but I believe at the elementary level, those potential reductions that we had previously identified total about 140,000.
About 160 on average.
160,000 or so. So rather than tell principals, you must cut this position, that position, we have asked principals to identify for us within that range of 160,000 or so, what do you want to cut from your budget? And we started to receive that information. We have, I believe most of the schools can, but not all.
Yes, sir.
They're working with a few. So to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of discretion on the part of the principal to identify within the budget that they control, that they have responsibility for, what are the reductions that you would like to see within your school.
Within their campus. So it would be up to a certain principal to involve whatever staff, if any, to make that kind of decision?
Yeah, the principal, you know, again, that's not too different from any other manager or administrator. Different people reach out to different groups. You know, in the case of the principal, they may or may not reach out to their other administrators within their campus. They may reach out to their decision-making committee within the campus. I mean, there's different avenues, but there's no requirement on our part that they do this. Right. So it's going to vary from campus to campus.
Okay. Now, I have a couple of specific budget questions. Can you bring up page 4? So just for clarification, on the 2019-2020, $2.6 million loss that you're projecting, that's due to the loss of enrollment that we're projecting after the 18-19 school year, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's with your projection of enrollment is lost there is what? How many children again?
It would be about 200, it would be 250.
Okay. Page 6, please. Under operations, staffing, general maintenance. We started out at 55 and we ended up at 218 on that line item.
Correct. We went from 2 units to 8.
And that's for additional buses?
No, that would be in our facilities maintenance area.
Oh, okay. So that's personnel?
Personnel, sir.
Okay. And on the teacher, 1.5 and ends up at 1.2, that's due to loss of enrollment and so needing less teachers? Or is that actually a reduction in force beyond that loss of enrollment?
So the original number of 24 was a simple mathematic formula of the loss of 500 students divided by 22, as that would be our lowest per student ratio. After digging closer and looking at the actual trends at campuses and seeing who we believe would lose students and how many students, and taking each campus individually at grade level, we came back with that we wouldn't be able to reduce by the full 24. We came back and said we would only be able to reduce 19 positions. So that's why it was reduced.
And the increase in administrational costs by 83,000, that's, who falls under administration? Instructional coaches, reading specialists, any of those admin positions?
No, no, sir.
Those positions fall under what, teachers?
I'm sorry, yes, instructional coaches and teaching group.
So librarians also fall into teaching?
The librarians fall under the campus program changes.
For this, where do they fall in this?
In the campus-based program changes. It's on the bottom of the slide.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
So the increase in admin is then not instructional coaches, or that's actually adding positions in administration?
So
The
when you say increase,
well, it's actually, I'm sorry, it's a decrease to 8 units. But I'm sorry, increase to 8 units from 6. So we're adding,
no, that's
Adding cuts.
that we're cutting.
that's what I'm saying,
We're
we're
cutting-
adding some,
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of cutting 6, we're cutting 8.
we're cutting 8.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had on that page, and I just have one more question on page 7. The 2017-18 budget was 2.6 for counseling, and this year, 2.3. $300,000 is equivalent to how many counselors?
Maybe 5.
It's 5 units.
So that's a reduction of 5 counselors for this coming school year.
I believe this includes, let me help me with this, I believe it reduces the elementary counselors. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Correct.
So we would then,
I think we go from 9 elementary to 5 elementary. Okay.
so we would be sharing counselors at elementary campuses?
Right, and this was, and as Dr. Saavedra mentioned earlier, that this was also based on principal feedback. And some of them, when they had the choice of who, they were like, well, I'd rather share my counselor, not my assistant principal. Some said, no, I'd rather do my assistant principal, not my counselor, to hit the,
And so some of these numbers already take that information into consideration, what the campus principals already gave you back?
So this information is, this is our basis for determining what number to give the campuses. So we took the positions at the campus level, so we'll say counselor, librarian, the change of librarian nurses, and said, that adds up to 160,000. The principals now have sent us back their recommendation to say, no, we don't want to change librarians, or we don't want to change nurse. This is our alternative to your recommendation. So the campus piece of this presentation is just a reference of dollar amount more than what position will actually be impacted going into the final decision as principals submit their recommendations.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Munguia?
First, I want to give a shout out to the Enrichment Club, which is back here today. They came to our community meeting last night, and I think that their opinion and voice was very powerful. So I just want to commend them for that, so thank you very much. One of the things that they had said was the need for more guidance counselors. So going back, this is one of the first presentations you brought up with the budget a few months back. That was kind of your first, this is what we're looking at type of thing, correct?
Yeah, so the initial budget was, again, it's an attempt to show the board the anticipated deficit. And so administration decided to bring some recommendations in front of the board to say, this is what it would look like if we need to get to a balanced budget. Ultimately, you know, we're still looking for guidance on what direction to take. If certain things want to be brought back onto the table as far as don't reduce them, then we have to go back and look for other things to facilitate the reduction. So the ultimate goal is just to show, you know, this is what it's going to look like to reach that number. Ultimately, what gets reduced is still the compensation piece.
So this right here has some feedback provided by the principals at the school?
This one doesn't.
This one doesn't.
This is just so I can keep track of what the reduction number looks like as far as, so when I give principals a number to say how much you need to reduce, this is my baseline to say we're looking at counselors, we needed to look at the change from librarian to library, things like that.
So to all the community members here today, this is not an approved budget because we don't know if we're going to get a TRE or not. So that's going to change what we cut or what we don't cut. So we can't make any decision until that vote day, the election day comes. I think it's great that we're asking the principals their advice instead of us saying you're going to put this much or cut these positions. They're going to try and figure out what works best for them. I would say, however, that the student voice is very important with that. So, you know, even if all the principals come back, which I doubt, and they say we don't want any counselors, I would suggest with the board that we try to find some way to increase it, or maybe keep it where it is, but change what the counselors do, their roles. So maybe Dylan, you can tell me a little bit about what counselors have to do every day.
So I'll be happy to answer that, but I think I would like to do a question of privilege or point of order. I don't know which is best. But as you mentioned, Mr. Munguia, and I don't want to get in trouble with the posting of the meeting, but you did bring up in your comments that we have the students that reported last night. And they communicated to me that they wanted to be on Citizens to be Heard, but did not know that they needed to sign up for it.
Oh, okay.
So
I can allow them because it is part of the subject. So as the board members are able to deliberate and speak, I will allow time to any citizen that wants to have a say in reference to the budget.
Okay, so I don't know if it's, yeah, it is related to the budget, yes, okay, good. So they just, as I told them that maybe after this presentation, that maybe we, perhaps with your permission and the board's permission and legal, that they could go to the podium and basically share their concerns, what they shared last night.
I agree. So let the board members have one round, because maybe sometimes those questions are answered by board members and they're questioning. And if you have more comments or questions, then it'll be over.
Okay, thank you, sorry about that.
And
And so so to answer your question about the counselor's role, the counselors have a lot on their plate. They have to, they are required to do guidance lessons with their students. In addition, they have scheduling, they have parent concerns, they need to be in classrooms doing guidance lessons, and unfortunately, more and more has come on to counselors, if you will, and so some of the crisis things that have happened in our district has been used by one person in our district, and that is our social worker, and we are using her through the grant, through the PBIS grant, and so that's what's paid for her, and it's also paid for a team that helps, and some of them were former counselors that are on the PBIS team, and so if there's a concern with a behavior that's a constant behavior, let's say at Madla, we make sure the PBIS is supporting that teacher and supporting that counselor with guidance, support. It could be, let's say, the reason why he's acting out because he hasn't eaten then we go, they connect with the city and try to get, okay, what services can we get? So there's that layer of support for our counselors as well, through the PBIS grant. But to that, our social worker is excellent, and if there is a suicide attempt she knows exactly who to call, who to work, how to get services to the families, how to get home visits. And so she's that added support to help the counselors. Unfortunately, there's been more and more, and it's been at a younger age. I know our high school students shared, some things at the high school, but younger and younger, we're seeing kids getting exposed to things that, we would not imagine a 5-year-old being exposed to. So she is that support, but she's only one person for the entire district. And so we do, again, she's very valuable, she's excellent. All of us, we love her, and I don't know how she makes time for every single kid, because it seems like we have this crisis, I'll be there in 5 minutes, and she's there. So with that, we recognize that there has been a lot of added duties to the counselors, but we have tried to provide an additional layer of support through that PBIS grant that we've had. It's also been training on what's called Capturing Kids' Hearts, and as y'all know, I think Dr. Saavedra shared that MATLA is a nationally recognized school for that, where that also says that, all of us are counselors, if you will. Teachers need to, how can we do random acts of kindness? How can we all identify bullying? How can we all be that support for kids? So we've added those kind of supports in addition, because we kind of need to stop thinking, well, that's not my job. No, these are our kids. We all love them, and it's everyone together. So that's been through the grant of our PBIS grant, and that's what's helped, move that support and hopefully, responding to discipline issues. Because normally when a kid is acting out, you have to get to the root cause, you have to get to the core. No child wakes up and says, yeah, I just want to, have a horrible day, or I want to go curse at my teacher. No child wakes up that way thinking, yeah, let's go do that. There's a root cause to that behavior. And so that is what our PBIS support, and that along with that does a social worker, and that is what we've had in place for 4 years now to provide additional support. I know, Ms. De Leon, you said that you had been speaking with USD. Yes, please.
Good evening. So I would like to say that the emphasis this school year has been building the capacity of our counselors. So we have been calling multiple organizations that work with mental health. So we've had Clarity, we've had Laurel Ridge. Tomorrow we have another group. We are also had a conversation with the Department of Ed on Monday, where they granted us permission to use. We had a director in the role of the PBIS. And so what we're doing with that money instead is the remainder of the money, and next year's funding source is we're going to use it for contracted services with an organization who's going to come and provide additional therapy sessions as Ms. Arceniega does. So the DOE, our contact bid approved, was happy to hear that we want to maximize next year as the last year of the grant. So again, she said, I like that you're building capacity. We also are going to be working in coaching capacity with our counselors, and she's also approved that. So we're also in discussions with the service center, and so we can begin to train our counselors, because we do need a special license to work with these and to provide the actual therapy. But to at least train counselors to see the initial red flags and characteristics of kids who are deeply in trouble.
Well, I think that's great. I'm glad that we're at least supplementing, and we know that the counselors will play this role. But I think it's also worth looking at just reevaluating what we're gearing them to do. And I think that if we're going to reduce vice principals at some of the schools based on the principal's decision, some of that burden might fall to counselors. So I just want to be cognizant of that and just make sure that kids are being provided what they need from counselors. So that's great. I have one question for Mr. Zamora. What percentage of the entire budget is that?
84%.
Would you say it's possible to balance the budget, but if TRE does not pass and we have that deficit, is it possible to balance that budget on the remaining 16%?
The remaining amount that we left will be $11 million for non-salary expenditures. So that would leave us with about $5 million for supplies, equipment. Again, that's utilities. Utilities alone is about $2 million.
So we have, if we did it that way, we'd have all the teachers on staff, but no lights on, no running water, no tools for teachers.
Correct.
On slide number 4, you have some of the projected enrollments here. And I think from 16, 17, and I wasn't here at that time, but I think that what we had projected as a loss, we actually lost more than that. Is that correct?
In 16, 17?
Right. At that time, we had some of the public meetings, and I think that what we gave to the community as a projected enrollment decline, was it more than what we initially projected when we came back in August?
The original projection for last year was about 9,100.
Okay.
The original projection. Okay. Then we also, as a result of the pre-registration choice sheets that came in, we adjusted it back up to about 9363. As it turns out, the actual enrollment ended up closer to the 9,100, 9,101. So yeah, we missed it by close to 200 or so.
Is it ever possible to get it 100% correct?
I guess it's possible to win the lottery, so I guess it would be possible to get it. But those would be the odds that you would hit it right on the net.
So all we can really do is kind of look at our enrollment decline and trend, and kind of base it off that, and what do you kind of base those predictions off of?
Well, again, so we look at the trends, and so the trends hadn't been as significant the previous years, so the 500 loss of students when we initially did it, we were taking into consideration it was going to be the first year of the charter schools opening, but because there was no trend line before that as far as 2 charters opening up in the same year, it's a catch-22, right? So we over-project our loss and we do the reduction based on 500 students, then it's sort of, well, we over-reduce. If we, go the opposite way, which is what we did, we were more conservative and said, well, we won't reduce it by 500, we'll only reduce it by 250 or so, then we're caught in a situation where it's harder to balance the budget at the end of the year, and it takes, administration has to take measures to try to now balance the budget on the back end and say, okay, what can we do to, not spend certain things, freeze positions that aren't, related or urgent, and do those things to try to make sure we still balance the budget by the end of the year. So, generally, as a finance person in most districts, you really go to the 500 and anticipate that you'll have a savings and a surplus by the end of the year. In this case, we didn't do that, and so that's why we're recommending 500 this year, is because we don't want to be caught in that same dynamic next year where we don't reduce enough and then we're trying to still cut during the year, and that's much more difficult.
So when it comes to aligning the budget and our projected revenues with the projected enrollment, we're just really throwing a dart at a target in the dark.
It's educated target. It's educated target.
It's an educated, informed, really estimate that we come up with.
Well, I certainly expect that we'll have another budget meeting pretty soon to invite the community, and I hope that the enrichment club can be there and they can invite all their friends as well, because I think our most direct constituents are the students in the school. Parents are the ones that really talk to us, but it's the students that we're serving. So I certainly think all this should be there. I think that we should have what funding is non-discretionary, so what funding is mandated by the state or by certain grants that we receive that just cannot be changed, so parents and kids kind of know what money we're actually allowed to play with and move around. and then hear their feedback and come back and try to align the budget with our projected enrollment decline, projected revenue decline, and then see what happens with your other questions.
Okay, Ms. Flores?
Thank you. Along the lines of projections and enrollments, we're projecting what we may be getting from the state from projected enrollment. But in the end, we actually get funding from average daily attendance. Is that correct?
Correct. So we use the enrollment number as a sort of the baseline, but when we do our calculations or estimations for revenue, we're using the ADA history. And so there's a correlation. So if we have a 92% ADA over, that same trend line of years, then we use the enrollment based on the ADA for the same, trend. So we use both pieces of data, and for a district of our demographics, there's the weights on the allocation, so we get additional funding for all those things that showed up on that previous slide, the special ed, state comp, all those things are weighted, and it really takes, so even if our enrollment's higher than the projection, it's not always discretionary money. So a certain amount of that money will go into those categories, and we have to spend them in a certain way, so it's not freed up, so we could maybe increase our general maintenance or our administration because we got to spend it on at-risk kids, things of that nature.
But when we submit to TA our average daily attendance at the end of the year, is that looked at, is this what you're saying, part of what, it may be 92% that is our average attendance, and then that's what they're basing also the amount
The state,
the district gets?
Yeah, so we send an end-of-year report on our PEAMS data that has our attendance, our average daily attendance, and so that's what the state will fund out.
Okay, so 92% is low.
Well, I'm sorry.
But I'm saying is, it's low, and is, Dr. Savetta, are we having a problem with attendance?
Yes.
Okay, that's part of the reason why, it's not the whole reason, but kids need to be in school. And if they're in school, that's counted towards, money coming in from the state. So what concerns me is what's being projected on the number of employees that may be cut based on the fact that we're not getting those monies. So what I'm trying to say is, and to the audience as well, and I'm probably speaking to the choir here because these are students who are very, who are here. It's important for them to be here. They're probably the good students that attend school every day, but then there's students out there that don't. And there's, and just by not going to school means that it's putting also the district in a predicament that we're not getting the money that we should. That's very important. Average daily attendance means you come to school every day unless you have a valid reason why not. You're sick. You have a doctor's excuse. So I know, because I say this because as an ex-educator, I always found that to be a challenge when you're a principal or an educator in the campus. That it's very rare that a classroom will have 100% attendance. Rare. Teacher may have 22 students in a classroom in elementary, but you'll have probably 19 or 18 show up every day. Okay? At the high school level and the middle school level, they may be enrolling 28 kids, but you may just be having 20. And that's kind of typical because you have students that are absent a lot. So I think that is a problem we're having, and maybe we're not unique. We might not be the only unique district. But I understand that is a problem, and we're talking about money, we're talking about people's jobs. So now I would like to look at page, go back to, I think it's page 6. The reductions, summary of identified reductions. If in the event the TRA does not pass, we were talking about the positions that are going to be cut. And I wanted to jump in on what Mr. Ibarra had asked, and then Mr. Mejia continued with the counselors. And Ms. Castro, you mentioned that you are giving the principals autonomy to make a decision as to how, given the amount that they're going to be, a range of about $160,000, is that correct? Where they have that
Elementary only,
elementary only? Okay.
a different amount from middle school.
Different, okay, so then, okay, let's talk elementary then, because we're gonna, we're looking at cutting 5 counselors out of 9 elementary. That's gonna leave 4 counselors for 9 elementaries. And if you're giving the principals the autonomy to choose between a counselor or a vice principal or a librarian or you're being, or a teacher, okay, say the principal doesn't want to give up the counselor and rather have the counselor there all day because of the needs of that campus. Now that will leave 3 counselors for 9 elementary schools.
No, that they would have, no, that's
Yeah,
not.
that's correct.
You would still be sending the
If-
counselors to the different schools.
Correct. If a principal wants if the principal decides that they want a full-time counselor, not a half-time, then they'll have to identify the value of that half-day,
Right.
The other half, out of another
Someplace
time.
else.
So they will get a full-time counselor.
All
They,
right.
they will cut something else.
They will have to cut something else.
Yeah.
So you still will have the 4 floating. I mean,
Well, we would have, the way we would do it, all the remaining elementaries would have time, if only one principal decided to have a full day. If 2 principals decided to have a full day, then clearly it starts to get reduced.
And then, of course, that starts putting, a lot of, how should I say, the problems will maybe escalate at a campus when you're only having half a unit there. In addition to what Ms. Castro mentioned, that the counselors have many duties. I agree, I know that at the different levels, they have a separate type of duties. High schools have their duties, the middle schools do, and the elementaries. And if I may say this, the elementary counselors, in addition to what they're required to do in the counseling, they're also in charge of the 504, is that correct?
It depends on each campus.
Okay. It depends on the campus.
Some the counselor does do 504, some that's also with the reading teacher that does 504.
Okay.
So it depends on.
It depends on, okay, so it's not every counselor does. How about the T-Rex?
That's what that is. Yeah, we removed that from the elementary.
Removed from the counselors?
Yes.
Okay. How about PBIS?
That's a whole, that's everybody. Everybody in that campus is responsible for executing PBIS. It's not a one-person job.
So who's the contact?
The facilitators, we have what, five facilitators for the whole district.
So
And they're assigned
if a
certain
teacher
campuses.
needs the services of PBIS, they have to then contact the facilitator?
No, they're already assigned to campuses, and so they're on certain days that they're assigned to campuses, to their own campus.
But if on that day, they're not assigned to that campus and they
Then you
need,
get a call and.
teacher has to call, not the contact at the school. Who may be
I'm
the
sorry?
not the contact at the school, who
It
may
could
be
be
the
the
counselor.
teacher, it could be the counselor, it could be the principal.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that at some schools, the counselors do have 504, PBIS, all these other things that are not allowing them to,
Maybe
to-
504, but PBIS is not a one-person role. It is everybody's whole
But it's
team.
the contact is what I'm trying to say. The person who has to contact the facilitator to go to the campus.
No,
No.
anyone can
Okay.
contact us.
All right. Then I have one more question on, and this is probably for Mr. Samara, and I believe it's page 6. Yes, page 6. I noticed that, no, it's not page 6, it is a page. That part where you had the high school allotment. is that
Page 9?
Page 9, is that what it is? I noticed that in the high school allotment, that was a little bit more than, everything else was reduced, except for the high school allotment. Can you explain why?
The enrollment at the high school sort of trends up. It's in contrast with what we see throughout the district. So the anticipation is that trend again will continue until we see otherwise.
Okay,
And high school allotment is paid by number of high school students.
okay, all right. So because of, we have more high school students. Okay. I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Guerra?
Mine is on page 2. The projected enrollment, like the 500 for the 2018-19, and then the 250 for the 2019-20. Were these numbers just based on the idea schools that are going to be opening up? I know you were saying that you want to play it safe with the numbers and give the district some room to work, but was that the only consideration for the numbers? What about the projected, proposed 150 homes that were set to be built, are going to be built in this area? New businesses coming up, nothing else was used for this, for the
No,
numbers?
I'm not aware of the new developments as far as housing that's coming in the area. So the way we, basically the way I'm using the 250 reduction from 18-19, 19-20 is it's a hope that we start stabilizing. Again, the charter schools will continue to accept enrollment for I think 3 or 4 more years. And so, you know, the anticipation is we'll continue to lose a certain amount of students. Again, you know, the discussion we're having as well is it's not just a loss of students to other charters or other districts. It's a fact that we're a shrinking district from a housing standpoint. So, you know, there's still going to be some sort of loss in, you know, in anticipation of future years. Again, we will modify those numbers, you know, if 18-19 enrollment actually is higher than what we anticipate this year, we'll take that into consideration. But I did want to put out there that it's not a one-year problem, it's a multi-year problem, so that when we look past 18-19, there's some consideration that, you know, we may have to have another discussion down the road about continued loss of students and how that impacts the budget. Again, going out past 1 year, especially with the dynamic of the charter or additional housing, it makes it more difficult to project long-term. The projection 1 year in advance is a lot easier, but going out 2 years or 3 years becomes more complicated without a lot of data available. And like I said, we haven't had to experience where 2 charters open up in 1 year and the dynamic of continuous enrollment for them going up and how it impacts us. So going out a second year is is more of a guess than anything else, because it could be 500, it could be 500. You know, that number is just there to sort of say we should anticipate a loss of some sort, and 250 is what we were sort of losing before. So we came back to that number hoping there would be stabilization in the district with the academies, with the other things that we have going on in the district.
Okay.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes, thank you. I have some questions. Mr. Zamora, you had mentioned that we were discussing page 2 about the enrollment.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that you projected another 500 for the next year of 1920 and
250.
for 1819.
Oh, yes.
And then you said it was going to continue, and that was because of the idea opening new grade levels.
Yes.
What grade levels are they opening?
I believe that in that year will be 3rd and 8th.
Okay, so it's elementary and middle school.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's going to start next year, right?
No, for 18-19, I think it's 2nd and 7th.
It is elementary and middle school starting next year.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The other question I have is on page 3 also, which is the M&O budget.
Yes, ma'am.
I asked a lot of questions, and I want to thank you for responding, you and Dr. Saavedra, to my questions that we sent ahead of time. And it's too bad that they're not being reviewed here, but I think they're interesting, and I think if anyone who's watching the live stream, they should look at the answers and the questions that I posted, because they are very interesting. On the our current budget, 2017 and 18, we're showing a deficit of $1,519,473. But I think in your response, because I had asked, is that, will some of that be used by the general fund? And, I'm sorry, and the response to my question was that it is anticipated that at the end of this year, that we will not have to dip into the general fund, but that we should be able to balance the budget.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we won't have that deficit this year. We should be able to balance it. I mean, there's always money left at the end of the year that we're able to use without dipping into the general fund.
Correct.
Okay, that was my one question. And then on page 6, on page 6, where you show the FTEs as of 4/18, you show the FTEs at the top portion on the possible reduction for campus staffing, operations staffing, central administration, but there's no FTE numbers for the other areas of reduction. And my question that I asked was that would there be FTEs, and the answer was yes. So why weren't the FTEs noted on there?
In that case, we were trying to make sure that the staff was informed before any decisions were made as far as the impact to them as the person in the department. And so we wanted to make sure that before we create that kind of dynamic, that we wanted to make sure the board supported these recommendations, or if they wanted us to go back and change some of the recommendations, then that we could do that before having to notify employees directly. It was already in the budget that, we weren't ready for that process to start.
But you've already allocated the amount of money that you proposed that you could, if you saved by cutting the FTEs for those areas. So you have an idea already
Yes.
how many FTEs you're looking at. Okay, that's on page 6. And then on the TRE, it shows the impact, how much we could save. Let's see if I can find that slide. If the TRE passes, I think you showed that there could be a savings of $227,000 for this coming year if it passes. What slide is that?
Slide 4 or 5.
4 or 5, okay. Page 4. Okay, yes, it shows that if the TRE passes, that we would have a loss, even with the TRE, of $267,162. But what's even more disturbing is even if we do a TRE, based on your projections for next year, we're still going to have a deficit of $2,677,977. So are we going to again impose another, we won't be able to impose another TRE because you are asking for the maximum amount.
That is correct.
That's right. Okay. And then one other thing, and Mr. Samara, on the, and I just shared it with Dr. Saavedra. I know you made the comment that our savings have always been 3.9 from the very beginning because of the closures of the 3 campuses.
Yes.
From the very beginning.
Well, I think since I've been here.
Since May of 2017.
Okay. Well, there was a yes, because in April 19th, at our second meeting of the district efficiency, we actually, in your slide presentation, it had 3.1 as a saving, not 3.9. So it's changed. It went from 3.1 to 3.9.
That would be correct from April to May of 2017.
Right.
I believe the statement we made was that since May of 2017, the 3.9 has remained consistent.
Okay, so it did change though. It went, what was actually presented in the presentation to us, to the public, was 3.1 and now it's gone to 3.9.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. That's all the questions I have right now.
Okay, I have a few. And so in the comments on the citizens to be heard, there was a word that says that, they were advising the board to pass a contingency budget. Can you explain that?
So practice has been that you could pass an alternate budget So what we would do is present one budget with the revenues that would come from the TRE, and then accordingly you would do any reductions that you still, that we would still end up doing, or we would not do any reductions and have a small deficit of 267, and you can pass that dependent on the success of the TRE, and then have the other budget which shows revenues at the level without a TRE, and then the appropriations at whatever the level the board desires, as far as a balanced budget or a budget surplus or deficit.
How common is that?
I've only heard that it's been done. I have not done one, so I could not answer that.
Dr. Shabbat?
The idea of the, and you help with this, JC, but the idea of the contingency budget is because in those particular districts, TREs are scheduled after the budget has been adopted. In this case, this TRE that we would most likely be proposing will be in June, 2 months prior to the adoption of the budget. It wouldn't make any sense from my point of view that come August, when we've got the complete picture, either it passed or it did come, that we would adopt a contingency budget, because we have all the information at that point.
Okay, that answers my question. One of the other comments was made is that you want feedback from the board as far as are we in agreement with the certain reductions at the board level? Okay, so in my past experience, we, as a board and as a personal trustee, I can state, don't cut any counselors, don't cut any nurses, don't go from RN to LVN. Our vice principals are needed, but at the end of the day, there is a reduction, there's a loss of money, and so that equates somewhere. And so you take into consideration our advisement, but at the end of the day, it's up to our superintendent and our campus administrators to function in the means that have been provided to them. And in reference to Mrs. Flores' comment as far as the PBIS, in dealing with grants, there's certain stipulations in running certain programs and how it's run and utilization. And I've heard good things about PBIS, I've heard not so good things, and again, it's how it's being monitored and implemented in certain campuses, and it varies. What my concern is, I've heard more good than bad, and I've heard that it has, the training that's provided with it brings a world of knowledge. Like you said, each person is a responsible person because they have immediate response time to what's happening. So, and I guess this applies to future, because what I'm hearing is that grant is almost ending. We're kind of close to an end. And are we already researching as to what can take its place? I mean, because with the deficit budget, and like Ms. Bravo said, even if we pass a TRE, we are looking at a possible deficit, but this is not to say what may happen next year. SAISD passed a TRE last year, and they're still in a very huge deficit. So that didn't alleviate, everything. So every year is different. And so that's, as a board member, I'd like to reach out to different organizations. We need to be partnering up with different organizations to utilize and maximize their funds as well as ours to be more efficient as a district and partners and to, create a whole person of a student in all aspects. And so I know it's very difficult for administration, these numbers are associated with a person. It is associated with a job. It is associated with a duty. And at the end of the day, it's not an easy decision. By no means is it very easy. But we have to operate in the funds that we do have. And I say this to the kids, you have elbow partners every day, and you are their first voice And then, so if you are a good attended student, it can rub off, you know, because they want to go to school to be with you, to be able to interact with you. And so, you know, encourage that attendance, because when you go out into the real world, it matters when you have a job. You know, you don't clock in, you don't get paid. So money's associated there. And so I commend you in this budget. It was very thorough, and it is a work in progress, board members. It is something that we are visiting. It's not set in stone. Ideas were thrown out, reductions, possible positions were thrown out, but again, nothing has been decided today. It is just a workshop. It's exactly what it is. And so, Dr. Savetta, do you have something to say?
Yes, I do. On the slide that's on the screen right now, which is slide 4, and we've talked about this earlier, under 2017-18, due to the miss in the enrollment projections and the result being a $1.5 million deficit for this fiscal year. And as we have stated, we're on track for making up this $1.5 million by the time we close our books on August 31st of this year. Having said that, Mr. Zamora and I both feel very strong, very confident that if we were to utilize approximately $1 million from the fund balance in the construction of this budget for the 18-19 school year that the board will be asked to adopt in August, we feel relatively confident that we would be able to make up that $1 million. In essence, it's, you know, when the board adopts the budget, if you were to, you know, agree with us, when you adopt the budget in August, you're adopting a budget that would utilize about $1 million out of fund balance. But by the time we close the fiscal year, a year later, we're confident that none of that $1 million will actually come out of fund balance. So I'd like to get some feedback. This is not a vote. This is just feedback to the administration as to how comfortable individual board members might be in reference to that concept. Because it would alleviate some of the pressure, not all by any means, but it would alleviate some of the pressure in reference to the proposed reductions on some of these positions that we're talking about. In essence, we would go back to principals and whatever amount we gave them, that $160,000, for example, at the elementary, saying you got to cut $160 out, we would give them a new number that would be something less than $160 if we were able to know that we could recommend a budget in August that uses about $1 million out of fund balance. So this time I'd like to ask the board members what your thoughts might be on that.
Ms. Flores, Mr. Clara, Rubio. Go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, can you give us an example of what would be some of the things that you would be making up that $1 million? What would be some of the things that would help to make up those $1 million?
Again, you mean make it up during the year?
Yeah, you said
okay. The examples would be this. When we recommend a budget, we are recommending 100% of salaries every single day of the school year. And as you know, we have a vacancy, and it may take us 2 weeks to fill it. That's 2 weeks of salary we don't pay. Another vacancy may be a month to fill, and so forth. Somebody resigns in April, 4 or 5 months before the end of the fiscal year, and maybe we make the decision we don't need to fill that position. Most of these savings would most likely come out of these positions that don't get filled so quickly. It's possible that if we improve our attendance, we've talked about putting more emphasis on attendance, ADA gets better, so more revenue comes in. So those would be the examples of how this money is made up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Milano?
So, Dr. Sveta, is it normal for superintendents to kind of utilize a little bit of general fund balance at the beginning of the year and then try to make it up?
It is very common. It is very common. And of course, it varies from district to district based on size of budget and so forth. I can tell you that having been in a large district, I might recommend a $5 or $10 million use of fund balance with the idea that we'll make it up, So yeah, it is common to answer your question.
So this wouldn't alleviate all the problems, and this is still not counting on the TRE passing, correct?
Yeah, this would help alleviate the pressure in reference to the 6.3 million that we're saying we need to reduce. And clearly, it's only $1 million out of the 6.3, so you don't remove all the pressure, but you remove some of the pressure, We basically tell principals, you don't need to cut quite as much, all right? What do you want back as we communicate with?
Okay, I think I'd be comfortable with that scenario. And I know you said you wanted our feedback.
I do want some feedback.
So mine is that I would be okay with that scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Now, provided that this year, you are saying you're on track to make up 1.5 million?
Correct.
That was kind of like a deficit, I guess, in the budget?
That's correct.
And so at this point, we're April. How much of that 1.5 have you made up?
The projection, again, so it's maintenance salaries that we look at to see that trend as far as how much salary does not get spent. We're trending at about $1.5 million. So, if there is a deficit, it'd be very minimal. Again, that's just salaries. There's always other accounts that don't get spent 100% by departments, campuses, different things that just don't happen for one reason or another when they allocate money to different projects. So taking all of it into consideration, I'm comfortable that we would meet our deficit, we would not have a deficit.
Right. Okay. Now, I just wanted to make one more point. To what Mrs. Votto said earlier, if we pass the TRE, we're looking at 2019-20 with still a $2.6 million deficit. The way I see that is that if we don't pass the TRE, we're actually looking at a $8.7 million deficit.
That's correct.
And so I really don't see a way to continue operating without passing the TRE. That's just my personal opinion. I just wanted to point that out, that no matter what, with a declining enrollment, it's kind of hard to continue operating without passing the TRE. And using up all of our general fund balance at some point. So I think that's important to know. That's all.
Ms. Clark, thank you for coming back to me, because I didn't tell Dr. Saveda what my thoughts were. I would be comfortable as well for you to
Thank you.
make those numbers.
Mr. Mongear?
Would you recommend that dipping into that reserve of $1 million with or without the TRE? Or would you recommend it?
I definitely would recommend it without the TRE, and I would probably recommend a much smaller amount with the TRE. Again, keeping in mind that TRE does not resolve all problems. Even with the TRE, you still have about 267,000. I know for sure we can make that up during the year.
I think it's a good idea to do that to help alleviate any kind of pressure from our principals and our students to do that. I just want to be cognizant of the fact that, if we don't pass that TRE, and even if we're able to dip into $1 million now, I don't want to come back, and I'm still here in 2019, 2020, when we're looking at an $8.8 million deficit and try to dip into more, because then we're going down a path of fiscal irresponsibility. Would you agree, Mr. Sullivan?
Most definitely.
Okay, so I think that, if a TRE doesn't pass now, that's okay, but I don't want the community to come back and say, for the 18-19 school year, you took out $1 million for 6.6, why not take out a little bit more for 19-20 when we're looking at $8.8 million? And everybody here has seen the budget, and we're looking at a $6.6 million deficit. So to be clear, if we don't pass the TRE and we cut the $6.6 million, and we come back in 19-20, we're going to have to cut another 8.
No, it's 2.
Okay,
I'm sorry, it's the difference.
Okay, it's the difference, okay. So I would suggest to the community members, even if we do pass the TRE, the money we take out is less. Either way, I'd be supportive. But I just don't want people to think that we can start dipping into that every year, that we're going to continue to have that deficit. It's going to keep growing, and we're going to have to keep taking more out, which is not fiscal.
I had a concern. So currently in our reserve, that's what we're dipping into, correct? Currently, it's at a 3-month savings or operation?
A little over. Our 3-month operating for next year would be 17 million,
And we currently have
about 20 million.
20 million. And it was suggested again by Mr. Cummings to drop to a 2-month reserve. What is your feedback on that?
I would not agree. I would not agree.
What is the average that other districts have in their reserve?
I would say it's larger than 3 months on average.
It's larger. What's the average?
I haven't done the data, so I would hate to throw a number out there. I know the districts I've been at, it's been at 6 months.
6 months. Wow, got a lot of catching up. Okay. I just wanted to know some clarification on that. Maybe we can do some research on the south side districts that kind of neighbor our student enrollment. And I'm in agreement if you're confident, Dr. Saavedra, that we can make it up, with giving you the permission, or not necessarily the permission, that we're okay with kind of doing that, but making it up in that year. And I agree with Mr. Munguia. Don't look at it as a remedy every year.
Yeah.
Ms. Guerra?
Mine was the same question, that could we make it on 2 months of operating capital? Or I know you said 6 months was a good number, but is it possible for the school to work with just 2 months?
So I would say that it's not good practice. Could we do it? Yes, we could, but then if we got into a position where we really couldn't operate past the reductions we've already done, so let's take it 5 years down the road and we continue to lose students and we reduced everything we can reduce without, really killing the district. Those are the years you want to have to go into your fund balance till legislation hopefully solves the problem for the district. And if you use it now where we still have some remedies, then you won't be able to do anything those years but default or really cut the district where it's going to harm the district even more than today.
And keeping in mind that it's just within the last year that we came back up to the 3 months. We had been closer to the 2 months for the last several years as a result of the lawsuit and different things like that. So just in the last year, we came up to the 3 months. I would not want to give it up either.
And I would agree with that, using it for the fund balance.
Ms. Prado?
Dr. is correct. This is not something unusual for a district to dip into the general fund when they need to. But they do also have other resources, other funds out there that they could use if they needed to, besides the general fund. You're not going to like what I have to say, but I just don't think the 6 million, I think, is something that can be worked out. I was not at the meeting last night. I wish I had gone, but I had prior commitments. But it's my understanding that the students were very vocal, made their points, and that was also expressed it was a lack of transparency, and that there's still a lot of concerns and questions that weren't answered. I think there's other ways to do this. This is not the first time the district has dealt with a deficit. We dealt with a $6 million deficit, I want to say maybe 6-7 years ago, and we didn't cut. There are other ways that you can do that. There's ways of attrition, that's one way, where you just don't fill positions. And there's ways where you can have probationary contracts, you have to look at that. You don't want to fire or let go of a counselor or nurse who's been there for years. And it's in the workplace, it's the last one in, it's the first one out. That's another option. And then there's other options. We did an incentive. We did an incentive because most of the deficit is salary, as Mr. Zamora just said. 84%? 84% of our budget is salary. The only way you're going to fix that deficit is through salaries. And the only way to do that is through attrition. Don't fill positions. You save a lot of money that way. And then the other thing we did was provide an incentive. Someone who's been with the district maybe 15, 20 years, they're not happy, but they need their job, they don't want to leave. You offer them an incentive and say, look, we know you're not happy, or you're getting ready to move on, or you're going to retire, but you're holding on a few more years. What if we give you an incentive? Will you take it and then just move on? That saves a lot of money because now you're looking at a teacher who's been with the district a long time and is making a lot of money as opposed to hiring a new teacher that's making the minimum salary. So you save a lot of money in doing that as well. And, but I think there's other ways. And I think that, you know, maybe in Dr. Serrera, it's up to you. A lot of the community, I understand last night were upset. Answers weren't being, questions weren't being answers. They want to be able to speak to you and get answers from you. And they want to see numbers. What they're seeing tonight is good, but I think someone said we need to be open and transparent and explain to them what is discretionary, what is not discretionary, what can we spend, what can't we spend. It's got to be more detailed because they don't understand that. And we understand it somewhat, but they don't understand. So maybe have a meeting with these people that were there that have questions, the community, and say, okay, I'm going to sit down with you and with Mr. Zamora, and we're going to show you what we have. And sell it to them and get their trust so that you can pass this TRE. Because that's what it's about. If you don't answer the questions, you're going to get doubts and it's not going to pass. But as far as the general fund, we've done it before. It's nothing unusual. If it needs to be done, I think Dr. Sveta, you had already said that for 17-18 in my question and answer that you were looking at 950,000. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, 9 citizens to be heard. Are there anyone who would like to speak? We will abide by the 3-minute rule. You do have 3 minutes, and are you aware of the guidelines, or does it need to be repeated? Council?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. At a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, members of the public will have the opportunity to address the Board of Trustees. It's 3 minutes long. We cannot specifically target employees or board members, and normal rules of decorum apply. We've got to be respectful. And that's pretty much it.
My name is Mark Mendiola, and I'd like to thank you for letting my voice be heard today and my concerns in regards to mental health. I'd like to start off by restating something I said last night at the meeting, which is we have over 9,000 students in the district. The American Psychological Association estimates that between 21 to 25% of these children suffer from mental illnesses. That means in our school district, over 2,000 are dealing with mental illnesses, with over 400 of those being placed at the high school. There are only 2 clinics in our neighborhood that provide personal and family counseling that also accept Medicaid. Only one of these clinics accepts clients who are under medication, who are on the medication for mental illness. Neither one of those clinics have psychologists or psychiatrists on staff. The average distance to mental health clinics in San Antonio that accept Medicaid is over an hour away by bus. The vast majority of clinics close at 5 p.m. before most parents are able to get off of work. The average wait time to schedule an appointment with a physician in San Antonio is over a month for new patients. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
School to prison pipeline is a disproportionate tendency of minors and young adults from disadvantaged backgrounds to become incarcerated because of increasingly harsh school and municipal policies and a continual shipping off of essential support services. Part of the issue is due to the surplus of police on campus. Our district spends about as much money on security as it does in social workers. I am aware that you can never be too safe, but there will always be danger regardless of what school you attend. This is unavoidable. However, I think a preventative approach to violence and behavioral incidents is much more effective than reacting over an incident that is already occurred. I also want to offer the option of a more beneficial alternative to suspension in school. We should take into account what factors are leading up to the incident and which campus police needs to be called. I believe that you will find that these incidents more often than not are due to problems linked to lack of support and intervention services, mental health of involved individuals, and other circumstances that contribute to trauma, substance abuse, and mental health issues. data and research from educational organizations show that replacing even 2 campus police with social workers can result in lowering the rates of suicide, self-harm, behavioral incidents, truancy, and violence, as well as help to improve the overall academic performance of many students.
Hi, I spoke last night about our memory. Again, before I start, so I just say I really want to thank the teachers that we have now for their educational help that they have given us, academic help they've given us. This is just something I achieved what I've seen so far. I am a student at South San Antonio High School, and as a student, I am affected every day by mental illness because we do not have mental illness help on campus. I have to take a bus 2 hours away in order to get my counseling. But when I go back to school, I get in trouble for missing school because all the clinics close at 5. If I did not get my counseling, I would have not gone as far as I have today. I am an early college AP honor roll student, yet I am treated as a delinquent because I missed school from my mental illness. When I break my arm, everybody recognizes it and wants to sign my cast, yet with my mental illness, everybody turns their backs and says it's not real and that I will get over it. I am only one of the many students at our school that suffer from mental illness, and most of them have no way to get help. If we had mental illness services and resources on campus for students dealing with mental illness, our dropout numbers and daily road incident rates would be able to decrease. And I heard earlier that y'all have a social worker actually help me. Yet when I went to go get help, I was not provided with a social worker at all, and they just gave me a paper of resources that I can use to get help, but all of them are on the north side, and I do not have a car. So thankfully, I am able to get transportation via bus, but yet some students are not as lucky as me and don't have any way to get help, and they suffer alone with nobody to speak up for them.
Are there any others?
Hi, good. My name is David Venegas, and I identify as a member of the LGBTQ community. And I mention this because that is a subject that I will be talking to you about today, which is that anyone that identifies as a member of the LGBT community does not get the support that they need, because me being part of one of those members, I have gone through stuff that normal people would not. And meaning, I have been bullied for it all through elementary. I have been bullied for it all through my middle school years. And even sometimes my parents, by my own mother, I have been told stuff by it. And I would sometimes go get help, but they would just, Madison mentioned, she would just give me a paper with a list of people who would supposedly help me, and I did, because I also have ADHD, and I used to go get help for that, but she was all the way in Kerrville, and sometimes my mom and my dad, they would not have time or the transportation to be able to take me all the way over there. And that's the problem that we have, because we need counselors, support groups, and social workers in our schools to be able to help those people who do not, who need it, because most of the people who go through stuff, like for example me, we go through depression, we have suicide thoughts, we think of stuff that you would never know is thinkable, and that's a problem. Because most people, like us, we are looked down upon. We're like, oh, don't talk to him because he's gay, or don't talk to her because she's lesbian. And whenever people mention stuff like that, I don't really like it. Because just because we're different does not mean we should be looked down upon. Just because we go through that stuff does not mean we should be classified as different from other people. Because in my opinion, we are all the same, and there is no reason why people should be treated differently just because of their sexuality or their ethnicity or whatever.
My name is Carla Hernandez. I'm part of the Religion Club, and we're all happy to be here. And we're happy that you're here to hear us out with the marching students. My concern was about the DACA students. They're not really given the resources to see their options for colleges. Throughout their high school years, they're thinking that they cannot reach their full potential, and that's a concern that I want to talk about. Because I have friends that are part of the DACA, and I want them to be able to reach the same potential that I can. I know they can. They're smart kids. Just because they may not be from here doesn't mean they're any different. Like my friend David said, we're all equal. We can all do the same thing that everybody can. And I wanted to see if there's a way that we can help them out so they can actually get those resources, but not be feeling every day that they shouldn't be trying to go because they're not going to reach very far. And see if they can get everything that they can so they can go up really far and they can get a better future.
My apologies for the people who does not speak Spanish, but como quiera voy a hablar español. Muchas gracias. Mi nombre es Evelyn Vázquez, soy parte de Enrichment Club y en lo que me concierne yo vengo a hablar de los problemas principales en los que yo miro, que sería economía, violencia y migración. Mi propuesta para resolver esos problemas, que no solo se hacen solamente en una escuela, sino que en toda nuestra comunidad. Estoy peleando mucho. Mi propuesta sería conseguir más consejeros, no solo académicos, sino psicológicamente, que nos ayuden mentalmente. A mí, yo no soy muy de hablar con mi familia y la verdad, no muchos lo hacen. Pero como en mi escuela nosotros no tenemos consejeros psicológicos que nos puedan ayudar en nuestros propios problemas, nosotros recurrimos a nuestros maestros o amigos. Hay veces que esos amigos nos pueden llevar a soluciones no muy apropiadas para algunos, pero hay unos que sí te pueden llevar a una mejor vida. Yo, por ejemplo, he visto que otros alumnos hablan con Miss Daniels, que ella ha sido un gran apoyo para muchos de nosotros en nuestra escuela, que es Sousa. Y de lo que quisiera hablar es de que con nuevos consejeros que nos puedan ayudar, no solo podríamos disminuir la violencia en los alumnos y eso, sino que económicamente también, porque nos pueden ayudar a recurrir mejores opciones, a no malgastar nuestras opciones de economía, y así podríamos tener más presupuesto para hacer otras cosas en nuestra escuela. También, como he visto, he estado en otros diferentes tipos de escuelas y en México también hay veces que ponen como tiendas donde podrías comprar tu propia comida, de tu propia elección. Pero hay algunos que no tenían el suficiente dinero como para comprar, así que iban como a un lugar donde daban la comida gratis. Y a mí como me encantaba, tipo, podía comer lo que compraba o lo que me daban. Hay algunos que preferían su propia comida. A mí me encanta comer mi propia comida, prefiero comer eso.
Haz fácil y ya se le acabó el tiempo.
No, sí, gracias.
Gracias.
My name is Isaiah Alvarado, and I'm with the South San Enrichment Club. And one thing I want to talk about is y'all getting an extra $14,000 plus for the transportation and students. That's money that y'all earn because y'all were able to transport them to school. But think about that they couldn't get to, a counselor outside of school or, to the doctor or something like that, They don't have that transportation. If they don't have the transportation to get to school, what makes you think they have the transportation to get, elsewhere? And, attendance equals money. It was, what, 11,000 something per student that y'all get for that show up? And it was actually 11,392. And I did the math, and that's 92% of that. 9,000 is 8,280. And that it averages out to 720 kids could be absent out of that 700, out of that 9,000. And, it's just how much of that is an average of suspensions and, the kids have to go to the doctor and, that all adds up. And, what can we do to help those kids instead of them having to miss school and having to, do it on their own time when they really don't have the resources? Why don't we have the resources there at school? Why do we need to miss a couple days of school to go to the doctor or, to go talk to a counselor that lives in Kerrville? Why can't that be there with our counselors? Why do we have so many police officers and not enough counselors? What is it, 450 to one counselor at our school, when it should be around 250? That's almost double. Well, why is that? And, let me see, I'm sorry. Like Mark said, there's only 2 clinics in our neighborhood. We shouldn't have only 2 clinics, we should have more than that. That's why, we're asking for, resources at our own school, because that's the place that we're at almost every day. At least we try to be. I guess that's all I have to say.
I think that concludes our citizens to be heard. The next report is, or the next agenda item is, the board will discuss the following board constraints. The board shall not allow the introduction of new information or materials related to agenda items once the agenda is posted. So board members, this is a constraint that we need to monitor. And do I hear any feedback based on, since we started instituting the Lone Star governance, this is applied. Anyone want to open the floor?
I will. I think we've actually improved quite a bit on that, on that constraint. I don't think we've introduced a lot of information. I think we've actually, I don't personally, but I know a lot of board members do ask a lot of backup questions before the meeting. And I think that has kind of helped with that constraint. So I personally think we're doing pretty good.
Anyone else? Mr. Munguia?
I haven't really seen too much of that since I've been here. I've only had a few meetings under my belt, but I always like examples. So can you please provide some examples of past boards or instances where this has been an issue?
I guess those who can answer to that is Ms. Guerra and Mrs. Prado. Can you think of any instances where this has happened?
There was some maybe information that I provided myself, but it wasn't given to everybody. I think that's pretty much that.
Yeah, when I first got elected, I think one of the items I had put on the agenda, I didn't provide backup information the day it was posted for the time frame. I submitted the agenda item, but not the backup. I withheld the backup the day of the meeting. And so that was clearly a constraint, that should not be done, so that everybody on the board and administration and the public had the chance to review it in the time frame that it's posted, the backup information, and not be surprised at a meeting as to what it was about. So that was one of the examples I did.
Okay, so absent questions we may have at the board meeting, so we're all on the same page, and basically when we get here, we kind of know how we're going to vote on a certain item. Is that kind of one of the reasons why we don't want to do that?
No, not necessarily how to vote, that you have the necessary backup to review and research.
Right, so personally, you know how you're going to fit the board and make decisions.
Yes, so personally, yes.
Okay. Well, I think I was new to that, but I think the questions do help asking them ahead of time. And so if any of the community members don't know already, board members are allowed to ask questions ahead of time. Those are posted online on the board books. You can actually look at them today and see the responses, so we're all on the same page. And there was a question I didn't think to ask, somebody had already asked, and that has been asked. So I think that's a great constraint.
Anyone else? Mrs. Brother?
I know this is the word constraint, but I think we had brought this up a while back. Not only should this apply to us, but to administration, that materials not given to us the day of the meeting handed to us. I mean, we get most of our backup information, but if there's new information that, if you can't get it to us in time for us to review, we shouldn't be getting it. And maybe we shouldn't even act on the item. So I hope that continues to apply to administration as well.
Yes, you made a valid point, that is correct. I think before going digital, I think I had 5-6 revisions of a posted item because it got updated and it got revised and even more revised the day of. And so yes, this has eliminated that as well, correct. Ms. Flores?
So yes, I agree with Mr. Ibarra and Ms. Prado that both the board and administration have made great strides on that. So I think it helps us be more prepared. The meetings run a lot smoother, and I think we have definitely improved a lot.
Mr. Ibarra, you had a second question?
I think one of the examples is if you would come, let's say today with a budget, and you would come with your own budget for the day of the meeting or things that you thought were important that you didn't submit beforehand so that everybody could see them, and you handed them out right now at the table. That's kind of an example of what we're talking about, that possibly was going on in the past. That really hasn't gone on anymore. But it also kind of shows the importance of Lone Star governance and the constraints, and that when we monitor ourselves and put constraints on ourselves and follow those, that the meetings run very well and smooth, and with a little bit of structure, it helps. It goes a long way. So, hope that was a little clarity for you.
All right, okay. So I think we're doing well in that constraint board. Great job. Next one is quarterly investment report. And Dr. Sutton.
Somebody's going to take that presentation.
So, my apologies. So this is you actually have two different quarters, the December through February, which is our most recent quarter, and new information has our different investments. So we have the First Public Lone Star Pool, which we have several different investments for a total of beginning values of $17.9 million, with interest earned of $94,000, deposits of $22.7 million, and withdrawals of $4.8 million.
Can we pull that up?
next agenda item. This one's Lorraine. The number 3 on recommendations. There you go. Sorry.
With an ending market value of 36 million. In our Texas term, we have 4 different investments. Starting balance or beginning balance of 274,000, interest of 890, no deposits, no withdrawals, and an ending market value of 275,000. In our tax pool, we have 1 investment account, 35,000, beginning balance, interest of $110, and ending market value of 35,093. Our grand total ending market value is $36,318,576.80. The second page is actually a report we previously provided, but we did not, we had not signed it as the investment officer, so we needed to bring it back for audit purposes to make sure the board approved to sign the copy. Any questions?
Board members, floor is open. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Number 4, report on both grade progress measure 3.1 and 3.2. Percent of students who perform at the master's grade level standard for all grades in state reading exams will increase. This is a Lone Star governance piece as well. Dr. Saavedra.
Ms. Shields will do this presentation.
So, Dr. Saavedra, Madam President, Board of Trustees, what we're going to share with y'all today is, according to our timeline, we actually got a little ahead of schedule. And because it's April and May are the testing months, we really didn't have a data point to report because we had already reported out on what the board wanted administration to share out in line with our 3 goals, our 3 board goals. So we decided that we needed to share out and promote what the reading initiatives that we're doing in kinder, first, and second, which does directly align to our board goal of reading and mastery. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Amy Shields. She's going to share with you the reading initiative and the literacy initiative that we really focused on this year for kinder, first, and second. So with that, Ms. Shields.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Saavedra. This year, we've been really focused on balanced literacy in K-2, specifically guided reading, and I'll speak more to specifics of guided reading later. But we have been using this year, in addition to iStation, the Fountas and Pinnell Benchmark Assessment System to assess students to determine their instructional reading level. So the teachers in kindergarten, we assess middle of the year and the end of the year. And in first and second grade, we assess beginning, middle, and end. And the assessment is formative and purely to assess progress, and so that teachers can group their students for guided reading and then deliver instruction based on the student's reading level and the goals for that level. Teachers really like using the benchmark assessment system because it's a one-on-one assessment. When students take iStation, they put on their headphones and they get on the computer. But when the teachers are sitting there in front of the students, they get to observe their reading behaviors and they learn more about the students and what they're doing when they read. So I think that together, iStation and Fountas and Pinnell gives us a more complete picture of each student's individual, how to meet their needs in reading. So first we're going to look at kindergarten.
And if I can interrupt for just 1 minute, Ms. Shields. So as Ms. Shields goes through the reading levels, the board members that attended the learning walks at the beginning of the year, if you recall, we would go into elementary schools and see, they would have like a clothespin to, to monitor, I'm on B, now I'm over to C or D. That's what these assessments are. So I just wanted to kind of put a point of context when we did learning walks. Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, in kindergarten we give it in the middle of the year and the end of the year. And at the first semester, in August, September, October, November, students in kindergarten are working on their pre-reading skills, things like letters, sounds, sight words, rhyming, all those things. And so we don't assess them with the assessment until December. So in December, if a student is still a non-reader, then we say that they are approaching the expectation. If they are reading at an A in December, then we say that they meet the expectation for that time of year. And if they are reading at a B or above, we say that they are exceeding the expectation for that time of year. So then, by the end of the year, which currently we are giving, the teachers are giving the end of the year assessment right now. And so we would say that a student who is still a non-reader at this point does not meet the expectation. We would say a student who's on a level A is approaching the expectation. If they are on a level C, they meet the expectation, and if they are reading at a D or above, they are exceeding the expectation. So we want them to grow. If they're already reading at an A, we want them to grow 2 levels by the end of the year. Same thing for if they're exceeding the level. We want to see 2 levels of growth. But we know that if they're still non-readers, we might not see them jump from non-reader to a level B in that time period. So, thinking about that, we're going to look at the middle of year data. So we assessed 496 students, and out of those students, 171 students are still working on those pre-reading skills. 183 students are meeting the expectation at the middle of the year, which was level A, and 142 students are exceeding the expectation by reading at a B or above. So I went ahead and put in the numbers of students that are reading each level, so you can kind of see that we have students reading, a lot of students reading in first grade at this time of year already. So after the teachers do the assessment, they enter their data into Eduforia, which allows the instructional coaches, myself, principals, to not only see a teacher view, but also a campus view and me, a district view. So that's where I can see the district data. And then I can go in and look at campuses or teachers and individuals and see where do I need to further support, or where would an instructional coach need to further support, or the facilitator. So that would be 65% of our kindergartners at mid-year meeting or exceeding the expectation, which I think is pretty great. Okay, so first grade. So let's look at the expectations for first grade. So what we really want is, we want to look at the green line, because we really want a student to come to first grade reading on a level C. And then by mid-year, we would like them to grow 3 levels to an F, and by end of the year, 2 levels to an H. So 5 levels total in a year. Same thing for if they came in approaching, or even if they came in at an A, we would still like to see them grow 3 and then 2 levels. So no matter what, that's our goal. So keeping that in mind, we're going to look at our beginning of year first grade data and compare it to our mid. So in the beginning of the year, we assessed 551 first graders, and 116 were non-readers. 155 were on an A, 113 on a B, which is approaches, and C, we had 49, which meets the standard, and we had 118 students exceeding the expectation for that time of the year. So if you look at the middle of the year data, where we assessed 561 students, so we gained some students in there between beginning and middle, yay, for increased enrollment. So you can see that we decreased our non-readers from 116 non-readers to 50 non-readers in those few months. So then we have, the expectation of course has moved for middle of the year. So we now have 250 students who fall into the does not meet expectations category, and I'm going to go further into that in a minute. And we have 56 approaching the expectation, so they're 1 level off meeting the expectation. We have 41 meeting and we have 164. So we increased our students who are exceeding the expectation. So I want to talk about that 250 and how we get to that 250. Why do we have so many kids still not meeting the expectation? So if a reasonable expectation is to grow 2 to 3 levels in that amount of time, then a kid who's a non-reader, if they know no letters, no sounds, or very few, they may only be a level A by middle of the year. So some of those 116 are part of that 250. So then if you look at the kids who are a level A, well, we had 155 level A's, and now we only have 41 level A's. So those A's, boy, they made some progress. They're somewhere further down the line. And then the kids who were level B's, the one in the 113, they, even if they made 2 levels of growth, they may still be part of that level D group. So if we really think about reasonable growth, 2 to 3 levels, we still have some kids, even though they made progress, who are in this range right here. So then if you look at the approach's expectation for this time of year, well, before we had 27 kids as an E, well now we have 56 because kids have moved from C to probably E or B to E in that time period. So also with level F, we only had 12 kids at the beginning of the year that were reading on a level F, and now we have 41. And so that's what we want to see. We want to see kids moving from one level to another. So as I said, right now they're assessing, so I cannot wait to see the data when they're done, because I really feel good about we're going to see a lot of positive growth, and we'll be down to a very, very minimal number of non-readers at that point. So let's look at second grade. So the expectation for second grade is that we want to see them come into second grade at a level I. And by the end of second grade, we want them to be a level M, which is, I believe, 4 levels. So from beginning to middle, we wanted them to go from an I to a K, which is 2 levels of growth. So in second grade, as the levels get higher, there are more goals for each level. It's more complex. So it takes students longer to master all the goals and move from one level to another. So, looking at the second grade data, we assessed 668 second graders at the beginning of the year. We only had 21 non-readers. We had 292 students reading in levels A through G, which does not meet the expectation for that time of year. We had 48 and 36, but we had 271 kids exceeding the expectation at the beginning of the year, which is pretty great. So of the kids that were assessed, 655 students were assessed. So our non-readers decreased from 21 to 11, which is great. And then you can see, if you look at the specific levels, we had only 258 not meet the expectation, but you can see that kids moved out of those lower levels, A, B, C, D, into the higher levels. So that's where you're seeing the decrease in the lower, and they're moving up into those higher levels. And let's see. For instance, like level J, we had kids at the beginning of the year, we had 25 kids reading at a level J. Well, now we have 41 kids because more kids are moving up the levels, which is definitely, like I said, what we want to see. So after the middle of the year testing, I met with each principal and instructional coach, and we reviewed data for each teacher. We looked at which kids were not making progress. We talked about why that was. We created action plans for that. They met with their teachers to talk about specific kids. They talked about, okay, what additional supports are we providing for these kids who are not making progress? So we talked about all that, and then they put plans into place and have been monitoring those since. The other thing is that this is our first year implementing guided reading with Fidelity. So I'm pretty excited with the results. And like I said, I can't wait to see what our data looks like in a couple of weeks when we're done. So with the data, when as teachers are assessing the students, the data that they get includes accuracy and comprehension. Then the teachers group the students and they plan targeted lessons to address the data and the reading goals of each level. Then the principals and then coaches meet with teachers to review the data and create plans of action for students who are not making progress. And those students might be also seen by the reading teacher, or if they're really not making progress and they haven't been for a while, they may be in the RTI process. Instructional coaches have been, after every training, supporting teachers in the goals that we are setting for each, after each training. And they give feedback to teachers on guided reading. And then in between the BOI, MOI, EOI testing, the teachers do a running record on students to assess progress. So we're not just waiting from beginning to middle or middle to end to see if students have made progress. So this is what it looks like when a teacher is giving a Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment. They have a student sitting across from them and they're coding for accuracy, and then they ask them comprehension questions. And then there's a formula for the teacher to score the assessment, and it correlates to a letter. And that's where you saw the letters on the chart. Then with this slide, on the right, the picture is teachers have to plan for guided reading just like they do everything else. And so they have a folder for each group. And so the folder contains their lesson. They'll go get their books and put the books for that group in there, and any other information that they need to work with the group. And then you also see a binder in that picture. And so each teacher has a binder, and that's where they keep all their data, and also the anecdotal notes that they're taking as they work with the kids' data. This is pictures of the balanced literacy training, and we've had that. We've had 6.5 days. We started last summer, and we've been consistently going throughout the year. The books at the bottom are our resources that we've been utilizing and learning from. We use those as supports for professional learning, but also in planning. The picture on the right is the teachers doing an inferencing activity in training. We're really committed to building the leveled reader libraries at each campus. And so these are a couple of the campus's leveled reader libraries. They're very organized, and the teachers go there, and that's where they select their books for guided reading. I think that's all. We're to the end, so I'm happy to take any questions that you have about the data or balanced literacy and guided reading.
Okay, board members, floor is open. Mrs. Flores.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. You knew you were going to get questions from me.
Oh, sure, great. Bring it on.
All right. It's not going to be as harsh as you think, because I'm hopeful that by the end of the year, these percentages are going to, the numbers are going to change for the better. But at this point in time, kinder first and second, all of those lower grades, I'm looking at about 47% of the students that are either non-readers or do not meet expectations or it approaches at this point in time from this data. But I'm hoping that towards the end of the year it's going to be much less than that. So my question is, if we should have any non-readers still that have not made this progress, what is the plan to address how to work with these kids by the end of the year?
So I went to each campus, and we specifically looked at who the non-readers were and talked about, okay, what does their progress look like from beginning to now? So what extra support do we need to put in place so that when we get to the end, we won't have non-readers? Because we significantly decreased them in first grade from 116 to 50. So I'm hoping that by the end is very minimal. So then we would need to look at, have we had that child all year long? Or did we get them somewhere in the middle? Where were they when we got them? So I think we would have to do a data, kind of like dig in and see, okay, who is this child? why have they not made progress, and then figure out what is our next step. Okay, do they need to go into the RTI process? What other things do we need to look at to ensure this child makes growth?
But then that would be the end of the year, and then we have a gap of X number of months without school until they start school again. How do we help these kids in between?
Some of the campuses, I believe, choose to do some reading academies in the summer and bring the kids in and work with them on their reading. And so they could definitely use that data to determine like which kids those would be.
And something to add is the elementary camp principals are also having those meetings with parents, one-on-one meetings with parents, for them to understand, because this, and you know this, it's not just, it needs to be reading at home every night, you know, with the support that we need at home. And so I know at middle of year data, when they went to go and hit campuses, because we got the middle of the year was December.
It was, kindergarten did get it in December, and then we got it first and second at the end of January.
So by our kindergarten students, we started making this, I know principals started meeting with parents to make them aware, listen, we've done this much, you know, these months, they're still hit here, this is what we need your support at home. So that has to be a collaboration between, you know, us and the parents and the families.
And that was my second question, as are parents made aware of the children's progress or the lack of, and how often do they meet with the parents? And is there documentation that they're meeting with these parents, and the parents understand where their child is at, you know, and what is it that they need, you know, is there documentation? Does the parent know, and are they?
This also feeds into our RTI process, where if we're you know, like if we have a struggling non-reader all year, let's say, and we have provided support, the parent has provided support, we've done our RTI, you know, and we're still not seeing progress, then we have to take other steps of, do we need to look at special ed testing, what assessments are needed? So yes, we have to document that in order to be part of it.
So how often do they meet? Every time at the end of each testing
Well, they do
meet with
meet.
parents?
They do meet, and they meet with the parents after they do a beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year. But like I said, they are doing a running record in between. They're face to face with those kids every day, or you know, in guided reading as they see their guided reading groups.
Right.
So they are able to talk to kids, I mean parents specifically, about you know, I need your help with this, or you know, your child's making progress here, but they get used here, or you know, like I said, they're doing a running record every 2 to 3 weeks on the students to assess progress in between beginning and middle.
Okay, because I think that the parent is a big component here, and they need to be partners in that. And I'm hopeful that, yes, that we're going to be, I mean, I like this tool, it's a good formative evaluation for these students on guided reading. It's important, and like I said, I'm hopeful that there won't be any non-readers by the end of the year.
Principal shared a story with me today about a child who called their parent to talk to them about the progress that they made. And that the parents literally cried because the kid's so happy that they can say, I moved from this level to this level. So it's exciting. Kids are able to, you know, they're tracking their own progress. They're seeing their own, you know, their own success. So it's good.
Right, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Yvonne, Mr.
Hello.
Hello.
So I just have a couple of questions. I know you said that the parents are a big component. Can you give me an example of some of the other plans in place though when you kind of identify non-readers or kids having problems with reading?
Well, we look at a variety of things. If it's a kid we've had like all year, then we go back and we backtrack and we look at, okay, well, how many times a week are they being seen in a guided reading group? Because if they're a non-reader, it happens every day. So then we look at that. So then we look at, okay, how might a paraprofessional support this student? Not to necessarily deliver guided reading, but maybe to work on letters and sounds, or maybe to work on sight words, or maybe to work on something specific that the student is struggling with that's keeping them from making progress. Or if we have because basically we want as many layers of support for that student as possible. So then we might also say, okay, this is a kid that the reading teacher also needs to serve. So the classroom teacher is serving a student, they might have a paraprofessional working on certain roles with the kid, but then also we might have that student might be being seen by the reading teacher. So we have multiple layers of support trying to deliver very targeted instruction, trying to move that student.
Awesome. And that's what I wanted to hear, just, some ways that we're kind of trying to impact the learning over there. So I understand now a lot about the kids that have deficiencies. What about the ones that are performing well? What about the ones that are exceeding expectations? What are we doing for them so that we keep moving them forward?
Well, I think that's the beauty of guided reading, because guided reading is about moving all kids, just like our approach as Mason Masters is about moving all kids and, from one level to the next. So is this, because those kids get seen in a reading, in a reading group that's there at their level, because we want all kids, like I talked about the number of levels that we want to see the kids growing. That's every kid. If it's 3 levels or 2 levels, that's the lowest kids to the highest kids. So you could see we had, going back to, I want to show you, do a second. Yeah. So, no, I'll do a second. Okay, so these kids, so like a J is, J through M is 2nd grade, but N through Q is 3rd grade. Above Q is 4th grade. So we have kids at the beginning of the year that were already reading in 3rd grade. And some in 4th grade. So we have kids now in the middle of the year, you can see those aboves, M and N are the only letters still in 2nd grade. All those other letters are above. They're 3rd grade, they're 4th grade, and so on. So you can see that some of those kids moved up the levels just like the other kids. They moved into those higher levels.
And what's great about this is teachers have, you saw the libraries, they have the resource. It's like, oh, little Johnny finished, what do I do? Let me make something. No, they have that resource to get them to that 4th grade level, 5th grade level, even though they are in 2nd grade.
Well, I think this tool is kind of giving you the awareness that you need to kind of target and make some real gains in reading. Even though some of the numbers may not look all that great right now, I think the progress is great, and that's what counts.
Well, and I know 3rd grade teachers would be doing flip-flops right now, knowing that they would only have, district-wide only having 11 non-readers in 2nd grade. We've had things where we've had kids that were way more than that, non-readers, going into 3rd grade. So only reducing that is really starting to build capacity of our kids, where we're not having to cram so much in 3rd grade. And it's from, the guidance of this board and the expectations you set for us academically, that hitting those masteries, it has to be pre-K, kinder, first, second, it can't just be 3, 4, and 5. And so
that was my next just comment, I guess, is that because of the goals that we set and the results that we're getting, I guess, out of that, do you feel confident still that maybe we don't, I don't know, in 5 years maybe we don't hit that goal, but we are affecting change in education at a lower level because of the goals we set?
Right. Well, and I would agree, and like I said, y'all set the tone, y'all are the leaders of this district. And and like I spoke at the other day when we were having our strategic design meeting, when we have board members that are setting that expectation, that helps me, because I know that I have the support of all 7 board members when we're holding teachers accountable to hold their students accountable. Or this, knowing that if a parent calls you, why is, they're asking you to read every night. Well, that's because, let's say you get a phone call, well, let's say Mr. Munguia says, well, we want your student to be at a high mastery level, and even though it is kindergarten, it's important that they read everything. Do you see what I mean? So it kind of helps us all move in the same direction, because y'all set that tone and expectation for us. So as far as us reaching that 40%, that is something that I'm wondering, because I'm looking at other districts. Randolph Air Force Base, they've only been, I believe, at 28% mastery. Alamo Heights, the highest they've been, I think, is at 24. So that we might need a little adjusting as far as a stretch goal goes, but I think it still needs to be focused on that mastery level.
And lastly, I just want to say I appreciate your hard work and the presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
teachers and the students are working
Students,
very
yes,
hard,
yes.
very hard. Teaching reading is complicated. It truly is.
Are there any other comments or concerns? Mr. Mungia.
The day you can get past Mrs. Flores is a good day. So, pat yourself on the back for that. No small feat. Question, how long have we been doing this type of measurement of reading?
This is our first year.
First year, wow.
When I came to the district last year and the conversations I had with principals, teachers, I mean, this was a recurring theme of, we need to invest in the professional development of our teachers and, ensure that they are, very, very knowledgeable about teaching reading and, knowing those reading behaviors and how to help our kids grow in the area of reading. So we put in have, like I said, we've had training, we've had a lot of intentional support, we've had walkthroughs to calibrate and make sure we're all on the same page, and then, of course, using this tool.
I think it's great that you can have this whole collection of data and then pinpoint the students who need maybe more independent focus. I think that's a really great tool. And just real quick, the smartest kids I knew in college were the ones that could read really well at a very young age. So I think by doing this data and really helping out the kids who need the most help at that early age, sets them up for success later in life. Reading is very, very critical to everything we do. So.
And some data that we've been seeing is that once students are on grade level, it's hard to get them off. And so our goal really is get them on reading level by 3rd grade, 100% on reading level. So we've taken some time to do research on what's best and best practices, and we've been really pleased with this tool and the way the teachers and students have been embracing it.
There's always work to be done, but you guys are doing a great job.
Mrs. Brother?
I just have a question. I too thank you for all your work and thank the principals and the teachers because they spend a lot of time with kids. My question is, the reason for doing this is to prepare them for when they go into the 3rd grade, that they're ready to be at that level. And like you said, we don't have to rush to get them up to par. They're already there. Are we going to do any kind of a maybe end of year test for these 2nd graders to see are they going to be reading at the 3rd grade level when they move on from 2nd to 3rd grade?
So we're doing that currently. So they're giving this assessment right now to assess their end of the year reading level to see, okay, are they meeting the standard where they're ready to go into 3rd grade, reading on level in 3rd grade, at the beginning of the year expectation for 3rd grade. So we'll have that data.
Well, and we can come back and report that data.
Yeah, I'd like to see those
Yeah, I think
results.
that'd be great.
And next year, speaking in 3rd grade, we're growing balanced literacy up to 3rd grade next year because in 2nd grade, K through 2, pre-K through 2, the focus is learning to read. And then when we get to 3rd grade, it generally shifts to reading to learn. And so, we need to make sure that our 3rd grade teachers know what to do if students are not on level or how to serve them individually in those groups as well so that we continue to grow them as readers.
Thank you. Mrs. Getter?
I'm not sure if you answered this one, but how soon after they start, like the next year, 2018-19, how soon are they tested to see the difference between the end of the year and the beginning of the year?
So we will begin testing. We give them a couple of weeks just to get their routines down and get to know each other and everything, and then the teachers start assessing usually right after Labor Day. And it's a one-on-one assessment, so depending on how many students they have, it generally takes them, a few days to get their assessments done.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great. I want to again emphasize on the hard work that y'all are doing. I'm glad we have, as a district, the necessary tools to start making awareness and getting those gains that's needed. And I want to commend the teachers because I know it's no easy. Reading is very hard, but it correlates with so many things. And in response to Mr. Mungia, I had a child that struggled the lower level grades, and when she did hit target on grade level was 4th grade. And it changed the whole perspective, her whole perspective. She enjoyed going to school. but if we can capture that earlier, and that's what we're trying to do, it does change their trajectory, and they get enthused because now they're with their peers. And so I really do commend you, and I'm really glad that we are utilizing the goals that we've set and holding that standard all the way through. You know, it's not just here at the board table and, you know, us pounding on y'all or being critical of the numbers, but that it goes back and that the teachers are seeing that you know, it's a group effort. And so thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, so I think the next section is consent. Policy BE Local states that the consent agenda shall include items of a routine and/or recurring nature grouped together under one action item. All such items shall be acted upon by one vote without separate discussion, unless a board member requests that an item be withdrawn for individual consideration. The remaining items shall be adopted under a single motion and vote. So currently we have, number 1 is A and B, and then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So do I hear any board members that are wanting to pull any of the consent items?
Number 6.
Anybody else? All right, so do I hear a motion for items 1, A and B, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8?
Motion to approve.
Okay, a motion has been made by Mr. Ibarra. Do I hear a second?
Second.
A second has been made by Mrs. Guerra. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Mrs. Prada, you have number 6.
I have a question on this approval of the purchase for additional food and non-food items. Is this, are we out of food before the end of the school year, or what's the reason for that?
Ms. Welch is going to step up to the mic.
Good evening. No, when I originally came for the permission to purchase food and the amount we needed, I underestimated on from some of the vendors, so I just needed to come back to the table and ask for permission to spend additional money on food.
And that's coming out of your budget, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Which is separate from our budget?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's all questions I have. I did, for Dr. Saavedra, there was one of the questions that I asked ahead of time on the consent was, did the school district ever implement the provisions for Senate Bill 725, which relates to donation and distribution of food in public schools? That was a law that was enacted the last session of the legislature. And there was something that San Antonio has already implemented, a food pantry at all the campuses to give to the parents of the children that are left over, because we're not allowed to throw anything away anymore. And I didn't get an answer, so I thought I'd...
Sure. The answer is no in reference to that program, although I believe we do have we do make some food contributions to the food bank, I think it is. Correct, Christina?
Well, what we chose to do in lieu of the contributions from our leftovers is we have leftover tables in all the campuses. And if there is anything left over, it allows other students who maybe want more, like maybe they didn't drink their milk or whatever it might have been, another student can go up and get seconds.
And that's
So we really don't have as much leftovers as we might have done.
Is that done at all campuses?
Yes, ma'am, for breakfast and lunch.
Good. I think that was the purpose, is to provide the community the opportunity, children that are still hungry, or parents pick up the kids and they see something they could use, milk or whatever, they could take it with them, instead of having to throw all of these items away.
To minimize the waste, because we hate to see the food going into the trash can. We'd rather eat in their stomachs.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
I have one question real quick before.
Okay.
So you're saying that in the food that's on a plate that a child doesn't eat, you put that on a table somewhere and allow other children to possibly get that food?
It depends on what it is. It has to be something that can be non-perishable. So something individually wrapped, or something the student hasn't already eaten, or touched, or.
So you're getting a good response out of that? Children are really taking advantage of
Yes,
that?
and some of the campuses it works really well. I've been to some. What it also made us realize is, if the student didn't want it, why did they take it? And we're trying to do a little more training that maybe if you don't want to drink that milk, don't take it. We'll offer you water, something else to drink. And so it gave us an opportunity to do some training with the students, so we didn't see them take things they didn't want. And it also, students know that table's there, and if they're still hungry, they'll go to it.
Awesome, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments?
Madam Chair, I move for approval.
Okay, motion has been made by Mrs. Estrada. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second has been made by Mr. Munguia. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, last section, discussion and possible action. Number one, discussion and possible action to approve the quarterly progress tracker. This is an LSG item. Let me get it up. Okay, so we are reviewing, and they are already been attached, the previous quarter, which was January, February, and March. And so this is a self-assessment for the board. If you look at our targets that were made on January the 17th, is the lettering in blue, which is very faint on the screen. For Vision 1, we gave ourselves a score of 15, Vision 2, 15, Vision 3, 9, Vision 4, 4, Accountability 1, 1, Accountability 2, 1, Structure 4, Advocacy 1, Unity 3, and for a total of 53 points. So let's go over those. And I believe we had 2 meetings in January, 2 meetings in February, and 1 meeting in March. That's the supporting documentation. And so let's get started. So Vision 1. So last time we scored ourselves a 12. And so let's review that, which was meets focus. And again, we have to meet all of the meet focus and the master focus in order to get credit for the master focus. Am I correct?
Correct. You have to meet them all.
Meet them all under the master focus in order to get that point. Okay. All right, so meets focus. The goals are all student outcome goals. They all describe what students know or are able to do, as distinct from adult inputs, adult outputs, student inputs, and student outputs. All trustees and the superintendent agree that the student outcome goals are all SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, results-focused, time-bound, but will also be difficult to achieve and require the organization to go beyond status quo. The board relied on a root cause analysis, comprehensive student needs assessment, and/or similar research-based tool to inform identification of and prioritization of potential student outcome goals. On board, I feel that we've met all these 3 paragraphs. I don't think we've gone backward. Am I correct?
We're looking at meets focus.
Yes.
So, yes,
So now, okay, we're still at a 12. So let's go into the master focus and see if we've completed all those. References to research that suggest alignment with the vision are cited for each student outcome goal. Students, families, teachers, and community members were involved in the vision and student outcome goals development process in such a manner that there is broad community acceptance of the board's vision and student outcome goals. All trustees have committed the vision and student outcome goals to memory and know at all times the current status of each student outcome goal. So board members, do you feel that we've achieved all 3 paragraphs?
Madam President?
Yes.
If I may speak? I think at this time, because of the new board members that we have, and they haven't gone to the training, I think that we can give ourselves a master focus because it says all.
And at all times.
At all times.
Unless Edward is very dynamic and has memorized all that stuff.
Unfortunately, no, I'm sorry, we cannot get to the master level today.
All right, so are we in agreement that Vision 1 is still at number 12?
Yes.
Okay.
We got an A for honesty on Edward's part today.
All right, so Vision 2. Vision 2, we scored ourselves as a 12. Instead of me reading it all, go ahead and read through all the paragraphs and make sure that we haven't gone backward. And then read Master Focus and see if we qualify for that.
I don't think we're there.
Where? 15 or 12?
Well, I think,
Oh, sorry.
I think in 12, we may have gone back because we're still not there with the all.
That's what I was saying, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, so we'll have to go back to the approaches focus.
What do you say, Mrs. Guerra and Ms. Bravo?
Yes, I do. Yes.
So then we're at a 4. All right, so Vision 2, we are at a number 4, and the only reason why we've moved back is because we do have a new trustee who has not been trained in the Lone Star governance. Vision 3?
There's an all in the first sentence of 3.
All right, so in Vision 3, we were at a number 3 though. So read number 3 and see if we are still at approaches focus. What say you, other board members?
We don't have this, I just lost it.
You don't have it where?
We don't have it on the monitor.
No, it's in our handout. That's been,
Go ahead,
The same one.
Go ahead.
yeah. Okay, so approach focus. Can you pull it up though from TEA's website?
You can pull it off of TEA. So participant manual. It's page 52, is that right?
42.
42.
Okay, so let me read it. Approach focus. Each constraint describes a single operational action or class of actions the superintendent may not use or allow. Do not allow hiring criteria at low-performing campuses to require less than 2 years of enroll experience and/or demonstrated effectiveness at improving student outcomes, or do not allocate resources, funds in a manner that disadvantages students in low-performing campuses, or do not allow the number of students in low-performing campuses to increase or remain the same. So this is talking about our constraints.
Well, the last two, we don't have low-performing campuses, so it would apply to the first one. Each constraint describes a single operational action or class of action superintendent may not use or allow, such as do not allow the hiring criteria at low.
Yeah, these are examples.
These are examples.
They're examples. Those weren't the constraints we chose. If we go back to our
I think we're
constraints.
aligned.
I think we're in line.
I think so too. So are we at a number 9?
All
No,
three
because we
numbers.
don't have all. Okay, so number 3, Vision 3, we're still out of 3. And the fun thing is, I hope you're writing this.
That's a video.
Okay, good. Vision 4, we were at a 0.5. The board has board-adopted CPMs for each constraint. The superintendent owned the CPM development process while working collaboratively with the board. I think we're still there. Do I hear any opposing comments? Okay, approaches. Each CPM describes a baseline, a target, and a deadline. Yes. The board has adopted no fewer than 1 and no more than 3 CPMs for each constraint. Yes. The deadline for each CPM to reach target is no more than 5 years away. 1 to 3 year CPM deadlines are recommended. I think we did that. The board has adopted an annual target for each CPM in addition to its deadline target.
Do have annual target for constraint progress measures? Annual and?
Constraints.
Uh-huh. No, we have them for our GPMs.
I know we have our GPMs, I don't think annual targets for constraints.
I don't think we've adopted that. I don't think we have a target for the deadline, and I don't think we have an annual target. That's what it's
Not for the constraints.
No.
We do have annual targets though for the GPMs.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's something we gotta work on.
Yeah, I think that's what we.
So we're still at 0.5. Okay. That's something that we'll put on in the next agenda. Accountability 1. We're at a 0. The board does not have student outcome goals, GPMs, constraints, CPMs, or annual targets. I think that's why we're at a 0.
Yeah.
So I think we didn't have a monitoring calendar either.
But
right?
we do.
We do have a monitoring calendar, but I don't think we have annual targets for our CPMs. So we're not even out of the first paragraph. Okay, still at a 0, accountability 1.
Yeah.
And then accountability 2, we were at a 0.5.
So just so you know, there are a couple of constraints that do have a yearly target, but not every single one.
Yeah, every single one has to.
Or mine.
Okay. So accountability 2, we were at a 0.5. The board has been provided copies of, but did not vote to approve, disapprove the superintendent's plan for implementing the board's student outcome goals and ensured that the plan included both an implementation timeline and implementation integrity measures. The most recent board self-evaluation took place no more than 12 months ago using this instrument or a research-aligned instrument. The most recent superintendent evaluation took place then no more than 12 months ago. The most recent board self-evaluation took place no more than 45 days prior to the most recent superintendent evaluation. I believe we are still there. Approaches focus. The most recent board self-evaluation, the board in part based on the results of student outcome goals. The most recent superintendent evaluation evaluated the superintendent in part based on the results of student outcome goals. We haven't done that. So we can't say we have a 1.
No.
And the next one, all board members have completed a training that covered the state's accountability system and agreed that they understand.
Okay, so that,
That's at Senate bill we were talking about.
that 1566, right?
That's the one we attended in Galveston.
I know
Not all of
1,
us.
2, 3, 4, 5 of us. I don't know, Ms. Brother, if you've attended it yet. But there's a deadline associated with that as well. Okay, so. Oh, tomorrow? Okay. We're still at 0.5 for accountability 2. Now we're on structure. And we give ourselves a 1. The board tracks its use of time in board authorized meetings, categorizing every minute used as follows: goal setting, goal monitoring, constraint setting, constraint monitoring. Yeah, we do all that still for number 1. So number approaches focus. All consent eligible items includes but is not limited to personnel. We do not do this because it says and more than 3/4 of the items were voted on using a consent agenda. I believe the last 2 meetings we exceeded our pull-out number. So we're still at a number 1. And now we are on advocacy. Advocacy, we gave ourselves a 0. And we're still there because we've not met the community engagement. We had one scheduled to have a community meeting, but it got canceled. And so we weren't able to have it within January through March.
And it has to be board, like, board limit, so even though y'all were like, okay.
Yeah. Where it's a two-way. Okay? Yeah, you can see Unity. We gave ourselves a 1. Once annually, the board affirms that it has reviewed all policies governing board operating procedures within that. The board has a policy that contains a template, ethics and conflicts of interest statement, and all trustees have signed with statement during the previous 12-month period. You signed that? Okay, good. All trustees understand that if the board has committees, their role is only to advise the board, not to advise the staff. I think we've been doing that, Dr. Savella. All trustees understand that board officers' role is to advise the board, not to advise the staff. Yes, okay. The board is self-evaluating each quarter in pursuit of the continuous improvement timeline. We are doing that. So we are at a 1, let's see if we're at a 3. Attendance for all trustees at board authorized public meetings was over 70% during the previous 3-month period, and that is a yes. Because we had vacancies, so it didn't count against us. The board was able to achieve a quorum at all board authorized public meetings during the previous 12-month period, yes. The board has set the expectation that information provided by the superintendent to one trustee is provided to all trustees. So board, do you feel that that has been implemented?
Yes.
Okay. The board completed the most recent quarterly board progress tracker and voted to approve it. Yes, we did. Yay. So we are now at a 3. Let's see if we're at a 9. Attendance for all trustees at board authorized public meetings was equal to or greater than 80% during the previous 3-month period. Yes. All trustees have completed all statutorily required trainings. Oh, Mr. Mudia has not.
Sorry again.
All right. So we are at a 3, so we did reach that target. Yay. And so I don't know what the total is.
So I just need 1 and 2.
Number 1, I think.
Here we go. 1 is we're at 12.
Okay.
2 we're at 4. Let's double check. 3 we're at 3. 4 we're at 0.5. Accountability 1, 0. Accountability 2, 0.5. Structure 1. Advocacy 0. Unity 3.
So what was our points?
So 24? Oh, I didn't it's 24.
24 points, so we went backwards, so we get no kudos to us this quarter. All right, so that's the end of that discussion. Is there any comments or suggestions to be made on this particular item? Do I hear a motion to accept the Lone Star Governance Quarterly Progress Tracker for the months of January, February, and March of 2018?
So moved.
Okay, motion has been made by Mrs. Flores. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second has been made by Mr. Ibarra. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Could I add something?
Oh, yes, Dr. Savella.
May the 2nd is the first Wednesday of the month. That's when we originally have workshops. And we'll be ready for the 3rd round of budget presentations. At the same time, the other item on the agenda would be board act, possible board action in reference to contracts.
Okay, so in relationship to that, do we have a date set for the budget, the community, the admin engagement to community about budget?
Yes, we talked about,
Actually,
actually, I think we talked about May
3rd? So was it May 3rd?
I think it was May 3rd, yes, it was the day after the board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually looked at next week, but the Fiesta celebrations kind of cut into that, so we decided to wait till the following week.
Okay, sounds good.
On what, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Say, and that meant, community meeting on budget
That's
preparation.
right, that's right.
Is that the 101?
No, the one-on-one is on the.
One-on-one, or 101?
I think we postponed
No,
that.
no. If you kind of remember, admin was going to have community engagement 2A, and then the board was going to have community engagement 2A. We missed ours due to the third-party entity having their meetings, and so April, the board was supposed to have one, got canceled, so May is admin. So I wanted to see if that date was set.
And that's going to be on the second or third?
Third.
May 3rd.
The second would be a board meeting here, and the third would be a community meeting.
And where is that going to be?
I believe we said Shepherd, I think? No.
Also, we're switching it to the third? The one-on-one?
The one or the
It was either some which one? Also for you.
Okay, so if you remember, we had a committee comprised of Edward, myself, and Leticia to start tackling the community engagement piece of our Lone Star governance.
So it's moved to
And so the administration, it was admin, board, admin. Board got canceled in April. Admin is having theirs, and it's on budget. And so it's going to be on May the 3rd, the day after the board meeting. And I believe that's Shepherd, or will be informed.
The Shepherd or one or the other. The other question that comes up frequently, and we've up to this point have not identified a set date, it's a question of if the administration recommends the board put a TRA on the ballot, when in May do we the board act? Based on discussions with Mr. Zamora, it seems like May the 14th or May the 15th may be the earliest, but we have a regular scheduled meeting on the 16th. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to come in 1 or 2 days early. We simply will put the question on the agenda of May the 16th.
For the TRA?
Yeah, that question will be on the agenda for May 16th.
And as we're talking about May dates, we're still on for the Lone Star Governance Training for the 4th and the 5th.
That is correct. We are all registered, that is correct.
Dr. Savannah?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, on the 16th, there'll be the adoption of the tax ordinance.
Yes.
I just want to clarify.
Well, the adoption of the tax ordinance
Correct.
is to put on the then result is put it on the ballot?
Correct.
Okay. I didn't use the right language.
Okay. So a motion has been made for adjournment by Mrs. Flores, seconded by Mr. Ibarra. So all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Time is 9:54.
I'll turn around.